International relations. India and its neighborhoods. Then India, China. First आएगा. Recently, border clashes have been reported along the lines of actual control in Tawang sector of the Arunachal Pradesh. India-China border disputes क्या है? The border between India and China is not clearly demarcated. It's no mutually agreed line of control along the certain stretches. LAC came into existence after the 1962 Indo-China War. India-China border is divided into three sectors: Western, Middle, and Eastern. Like, अब friction points क्या पे यहाँ पे? Aksai chain, okay, Dol, Begi, Oldie, Ladakh, Pangong, so Barawati, फिर अच्छा इधर, okay. So dispute क्या है? Western sector में, Ladakh में. The boundary dispute in this sector pertains to the Johnson Line proposed by the British in the 1860s that extended up to the Kunlun mountains and put Aksai chain in the then princely states of Jammu and Kashmir. Then middle sectors क्या है? Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. In this sector, dispute is minor one. Here, LSC is at least the controversial except for the precise alignment to be followed in the Barawati plains. Eastern sectors में आता है over the McMahon line. Okay, so India stand क्या है? Western sectors में Ladakh में India uses the Johnson line and claims Aksai chain as its own. China का क्या है? China does not recognize Johnson line and instead accepts McDonald line which puts Aksai chain under its control. Then middle sectors में India and China have exchanged maps on which they broadly agree. And eastern sectors में Arunachal में India asserts that according to the line Tawang Tract is part of India and China asserts that Tawang Tract is part of its territory. Okay, border dispute mechanism between India and China. 1993 में agreement on the maintenance of the peace and tranquility along the LAC. Then 1996 में agreement on the confidence building measures. 2005 में होता है implementation of confidence building measures in the military field along with LACs. And 2012 में agreement of the establishment of a working mechanism for consultations and coordinations in India-China border affairs. In 2013 में border defense cooperation agreement. India-China relations key facts. Yes. Historically, Silk Road served as a major trade route between the India and the China and for facilitating the spread of Buddhism from India to Eastern Asia. India shares 3448 kilometers of border with China that runs along the union territories of the Ladakh and the states of Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Uttarakhand and Arunachal Pradesh. The bilateral trade between China and India is more than $100 billion. Then India's trade deficit with China is more than $56 billion. Biggest single trade deficit India has with any country. Then sister cities relationships is there between Delhi, Beijing, Ahmedabad, Guangzhou, Bangalore, Chengdu, Kolkata, Kunming and Chennai, Quanzhou, and sister province relationship between the Gujarat and Guangdong province and Tamil Nadu and Fujian province. And both the countries are members of multilateral groups such as BRICS, SCO, RIC, WTO, and UN and G20. Then one China policy क्या है? तो in the news, US House Speaker's recent visit to China. Yes, Nancy Pelosi. India's policy on Taiwan क्या है? India follows the one China policy since 1949 and has no formal ties with China yet. Also in 1995, India and Taiwan established offices in each of the countries for diplomatic relations with focus on commerce, culture and education. The US has maintained one China policy since 1970s, recognizing Taiwan as a part of China, but it has unofficial ties with Taiwan as well as a strategic known as a strategic or deliberate ambiguity. The island of Taiwan is part of so-called First Island Chain, which include a list of US-friendly territories that are crucial to US foreign policy. What is one China policy? It's a policy of acknowledging that there is only one Chinese government as opposed to separate Chinese states. Further, under this principle, countries also considered disputed territories of Taiwan, Tibet, Hong Kong and Xinjiang to be inseparable part of the mainland China. Our first island chain. The first island chain comprises the Kuril Island, Japanese archipelago, Ryukyu Island, Taiwan and Northwest Philippines and ending at Borneo. The chain is the first line of defense and serves as the maritime boundaries between the East China Sea, Philippine Sea, South China Sea and Sulu Sea. In this chain are located the Bashi Channel and Miyako Strait, which are critical checkpoints for China. It's a part of island chain strategy formulated by the US in 1951 to contain erstwhile USSR and China with a string of naval bases in the Western Pacific region to restrict sea access to these two countries. Island chain strategies क्या है? Djibouti से border, okay. One country, two systems. Okay, China marked the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return and emphasized Beijing's control over the Hong Kong under one country, two system. क्या है background of OCTS? It was originally proposed to unify China and Taiwan but rejected by the Taiwan. The idea resurfaced when China started talks with Britain and Portugal. Okay, about OCTS के under this, China proposed that Hong Kong and Macau can have different economic and political systems from that of mainland China while being part of China. Both regions became special administrative regions of China with their own currencies, economic and legal system. However, defense and foreign affairs would be decided by China. Also, Hong Kong has a freedom of assembly and speech and some democratic rights which are not available to mainland China. So, these freedoms are protected by the basic law, mini constitution that guides relationship between the Hong Kong and China. And basic law is valid for 50 years till 2047 for Hong Kong and 2049 for Macau. But it's unclear what happened after this term. India-Pakistan. India-Pak border runs along the Ladakh, Jammu Kashmir, Punjab, Rajasthan and Gujarat for a length of 2300 kilometers. India-Pakistan boundary is a result of partition in 1947 under the Redcliffe Award. Bilateral trade is around $500 million and India has a trade surplus. Cross LOC travel was started in 2005 and trade across Jammu Kashmir was initiated in 2009. Kartarpur corridor provides for the visa-free travel of Indian pilgrimage as well as overseas citizens of India. Cardholders to Gurdwara, Kartarpur Sahib in Pakistan. India and Pak signed a visa agreement in 2012 leading to the liberalization of bilateral visa regimes between the two countries. India and Pakistan are members of multilateral groups such as SAARC, G33, WTO and UN. Then Indus Water Treaty. When the news, India issued a notice to Pakistan to modify Indus Water treaties. Then more on the news, the notice opens up process for making changes to the treaty for the first time since it was signed. India is seeking modification in the treaty to make it easier for Pakistan to enter into the intergovernmental negotiations within 90 days and rectify the material breach of IWT. Notice was issued in the line Article 12(3) of treaty, which states the provision of this treaty may from time to time be modified by a duly ratified treaty between the two governments. Important international principles for water sharing. The Hormone Doctrine. It postulates that every state is a sovereign in its water resources and has the right to do whatever it likes. Campion rules. It outlines the need to include the water of an aquifer while determining the reasonable equitable share. Helsinki Rules 1996 may establish the principle of reasonable and equitable utilization of the waters of an international drainage basin among riparian states is the basic principle of international water law, and Berlin Rule 2004 provides that basin states should manage the water of an international drainage basins having due regard for the obligation not to cause significant harm to other basin states. About Indus Water Treaty क्या है? It was signed in 1960 between India and Pakistan and brokered by the World Bank. Object is to delimit the rights and obligations of the both countries. It consists of 6 main rivers. Yes. Then provision for sharing of east river क्या waters क्या all the waters of the eastern rivers. There is Satluj, there is BRS India को मिलता है. BS Satluj Ravi, which amounts to around 33 million acre feet annually, is allocated to India. And the water of western जो कि CGI बोल सकते हैं जिसको इंडस चैनल झेलम चेनाब, which is around 135 MF, है ना, it is allocated to mostly Pakistan. So India has the right under the treaty to generate hydroelectricity through run of the river project on the western rivers. This are subject to specific criteria for design and operation. Then Indian hydroelectric power projects on tributaries of Chenab river क्या हैं? Tributaries of Chenab, Chenab पे hydroelectric power project Chenab पे पाकलडुल, कीरू, कलनाई, राटले, है ना, run of the river hydroelectric project है ये सब. Is a type of generating plant. There is no water storage is provided. Then 3-step dispute resolution mechanism under IWT क्या है? Step 1 permanent Indus commission, then neutral expert and court of arbitration. Then take other provisions provided for the funding and building of dams, link canals, barrages and tube wells. Notably the Tarbela Dam on the Indus River and Mangala Dam on the Jhelum River. Yes, the treaty required the creation of a permanent Indus Commission with a commissioner from each country to maintain a channel for communication and try to resolve questions about the implementation of the treaty. In addition, a mechanism for resolving disputes was provided. Then comes countries mechanism for cooperations. India Nepal, the Kosi Treaty of 1954, under which embankments in Nepal were established and maintained. Mahakali Treaty pertains to sharing water of Mahakali River. Then India China Memorandum of Understanding MOUs upon the provision of hydrological information of the river Brahmaputra. Then MOU on hydrological data sharing on river Satluj. Then expert level mechanism to discuss interactions and cooperations on provisions of flood season hydrological data and emergency management. India Bangladesh, the Ganges Treaty is an agreement to share surface waters with the Farakka barrage near their mutual border. System of transmission of the flood forecasting data on major rivers like Ganga, Tista, Brahmaputra and Barak during the monsoon season. India Bhutan comprehensive scheme for establishment of hydrometeorological and flood forecasting network on river common to India and Bhutan, a joint group of experts on flood management. Then Shimla Agreement आता है, वहाँ in the news. शिमला एग्रीमेंट के 50 साल हुए 2022 में. अबाउट शिमला एग्रीमेंट वाज साइंड 2 जुलाई 1972 between the India It laid a comprehensive blueprint for good neighborly relations between the countries. It was signed to reverse the consequences of the 1971 war. Key principles of Shimla Agreement क्या है? The Charter of the United Nations shall govern the relations between the two countries. Mutual commitment to the peaceful resolution of all issues through direct bilateral approaches to build foundations of the cooperative relationships with special focus on the people-to-people context, and to uphold the inviolability of the line of control in Jammu Kashmir. Respect for each other's national unity, territorial integrity, political independence, and sovereign equality. While India has faithfully observed the Shimla Agreement principles, Pakistan did not live up its own initial promises as it keeps raising the Kashmir issue at international forums. Frequent line of control violation, LOC का violation करता है, और apart from Shimla Agreement, the Lahore Declaration 1999 reiterated among other things that the Kashmir issue needed to be resolved bilaterally. Then China-Pakistan economic corridor क्या है? It's a 3,000 kilometer long route of infrastructure projects connecting Pakistan's Gwadar port in the Balochistan to India, China's northwestern Xinjiang region. Why? बताओ क्यों? क्योंकि China and Pakistan have decided to invite interested third countries to join the CPEC projects and are also planning to expand CPEC projects to Afghanistan. The CPEC is a part of China's most ambitious projects, BRI. The BRI launched in 2013 aims to link Southeast Asia, Central Asia, Gulf region, Africa and Europe with a network of land and sea routes. It will pave the way for China to access the Middle East and Africa from Gwadar port, enabling China to access Indian Ocean, and in return China will support developmental projects in the Pakistan to overcome the latest energy crisis and stabilizing its faltering economy. India has repeatedly registered its protest over the CPEC. The Gilgit-Baltistan से Islamabad, Lahore, there is Ismail Khan. Okay, then Gilgit-Baltistan region में आता है. Why in the news recently? The demonstrations have erupted in the Gilgit-Baltistan due to the dearth of fuel, food and electricity. इनसे क्या? Gilgit was a part of princely state of Jammu Kashmir following the India-Pak ceasefire on 1949. Provisional government of Azad Jammu and Kashmir ceded administration of Gilgit-Baltistan to Pakistan in 2021. India criticized the Pakistan for its attempt to accord provincial status to the Gilgit-Baltistan. The UTs of Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh, including the Gilgit-Baltistan, are an integral part of India by virtue of the access of Jammu Kashmir to Union of India in 1947. The area's strategic importance for India has increased in light of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor Agreement. Area ceded to China by Pakistan, Gilgit-Baltistan, Plan of Control, Aksai Chin, Ladakh, Jammu Kashmir. Then India-Bangladesh were in the news. Recently, India-Bangladesh announced several initiatives to further cooperate between the two nations. The key decisions or initiatives क्या है? Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Both sides will soon commence negotiations on CEPA. CEPA is a bilateral agreement that covers trade in the goods and services, investment, competition, and IPR. Water sharing signed MOU on sharing of waters of Kushiara River, first such pact since signing of Ganga Water Treaty in 1996. Kushiara forms on India-Bangladesh border as a branch of Barak River when Barak separates into the Kushiara and Surma. Then other major connectivity projects between the two countries came. Protocol on inland water transit and trade, connecting the inland waterways of India and Bangladesh for commerce and trade. Second addendum to the protocol included two new routes, Sonamura, Daudkandi on River Gomti and extensions of Dhulia to Godagiri up to Aricha on River Padma, 5 new ports of call and 2 extended ports of call. Then India-Bangladesh Friendship Pipeline Project will connect Siliguri and Parbatipura to provide a stable supply of diesel. Then railway link between the Chelati and Haldibari. Then Feni Bridge, Metri Setu over the Feni River connects Sabrum, Tripura and Ramgarh, Bangladesh. Then Chattogram, Mongla ports and Mongla ports in Bangladesh are used by India for transporting goods to bordering northeastern states. Then Agartala Akhora rail link is also expected to open up markets of North India's northeastern states for Bangladesh. देख जो CEPA agreement है, it's a bilateral agreement that covers trade in the goods, service, investment, competition and IPR. Water sharing ठीक है. Okay, so India Bangladesh relations key facts देखते हैं. India Bangladesh shares 4,100 kilometers of international border with 5 Indian states: Assam, West Bengal, Mizoram, Meghalaya and Tripura. Bangladesh is India's biggest trading partner in South Asia. India is the second biggest trading partner of the Bangladesh after China. The bilateral trade is around $18 billion. Bangladesh has been the largest recipient of Indian lines of credit amounting to $8 billion. Recently, India offered $500 million lines of credit for joint production of defense equipment. After the 1971 India-Pakistan war, India and Bangladesh signed a treaty of peace and friendship in 1972. India shares 54 transboundary rivers with Bangladesh with several disputes including the Tista, Ganga, Tapaimuk hydroelectric power projects on the river, Barak, etc. The India-Bangladesh cooperate in the international forums like SARC, BIMSTEC, BBIN, Indian Ocean, IORA, एक्सेट्रा. ओके, कनेक्टिविटी प्रोजेक्ट्स क्या, इनॉग्रेशन और रूपशा ब्रिज, a key part of the Khulna Mongla Port Rail projects. Then Khulna Darshana Railway Link project, upgrading the existing infrastructure from Gedi Darshana to Khulna. Then Parvatipura Koinya railway line will connect to existing border rail at Birol, Radhikapur. Then others, Maitri power plant at Rampal Khulna is being set up as an Indian developmental assistance under the concessional financing scheme. Under CFS, Government of India has been supporting Indian entities bidding for strategically important infrastructure projects abroad. In India Nepal Inc 8 pacts. Key decisions under the pacts क्या, railways, cross border railway line linking the Jayanagar in Bihar to Kurta in Nepal. Power, India handed over the Solu corridor, 90 km 132 kilowatt power transmission line built under an Indian line of credit. Inaugurated the Kataya Kusaha and Roxol Parvanipur. Cross border power transmission line, and both sides will expedite implementation of the Pancheshwar multi-purpose projects. The connectivity is linked an agreement for construction of bridge over the river Mechi, part of the ASEAN Development Bank's South Asian Sub-Regional Economic Cooperation Road Connectivity Program. Then Nepal joined India-led International Solar Alliance, launched India's RuPay card in Nepal. RuPay is 11, Bhutan, Singapore and UAE also. Other recent developments क्या, India International Center for Buddhist Culture and Heritage, India PM led Foundation of India International Center for Buddhist Culture and Heritage by International Buddhist Confederation, India and Lumbini, Nepal. Sister cities, India and Nepal agreed in the principle to establish sister city relations between the Lumbini and Kushinagar. Lumbini birthplace of Lord Buddha, Kushinagar death place of Lord Buddha. Then Saptakoshi Dam project क्या, India Nepal agrees to take forward a Saptakoshi High Dam project on Saptakoshi River to control floods in southeast Nepal and northern Bihar and to generate hydropower. India is also involved in the other projects such as Mahakali Treaty, Upper Karnali projects and the Arun 3 projects in western and eastern Nepal respectively. West Sethi and Sethi River projects memorandum of MOU was signed between the Nepal and India to develop the West Sethi and Sethi Rivers projects, which was abandoned by the China. MOU with Nepal on biodiversity conservation, transboundary protected areas with Nepal, for example Kanchenjunga Conservation Area, Terai Arc landscape and sacred Himalayan landscapes. Then Kanchenjunga Conservation Area located in the northeastern corner of Nepal near the border with India and Tibet. Terai Arc landscapes spread across the Indian states of Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and the low-lying hills of Nepal. Then sacred Himalayan landscapes with 74% areas falls in the Nepal, 25% falls in the Sikkim of India and the remaining falls in the Bhutan. Then India-Nepal relations key facts क्या, India and Nepal shares an approximately 1800 km long open border running along West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Bihar and Sikkim. India-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1950 forms the bedrock of special relations between the India and Nepal. Nepali citizens in India nearly 8 million, 80 lakh लोग रहते हैं India Nepali. Avail facilities and opportunities on par with Indian citizens in accordance with the provisions of the treaty. India is the largest trading partner of the Nepal. Bilateral trade is more than $1 billion 7. India provides assistance to the Nepalese army in its modernization and conducts joint exercise Surikaran, very important. Energy cooperations में आता है power exchange agreement since 1971 for meeting the power requirements in the border areas. Then South Asia's first cross-border petroleum products pipeline constructed and funded by the India connecting Motiari in India to Amlekganj in Nepal. Then Swami Vivekananda Center for Indian Culture in Kathmandu showcases the best of Indian culture. Both countries cooperate on multilateral platforms like BBI and BIMSTEC, Nam, SARC, etc. Then border dispute Kalapani, a tri-junction between Nepal and China is in India's control, but Nepal claims the region because of historical and cartographic reason. Okay, so Rara National Park, Shefok Sundo National Park, Annapurna, ये नेपाल में है. इंडिया श्रीलंका आते हैं. इंडिया एंड श्रीलंका have signed a MOU for Bharat Electronics Limited to set up state-of-the-art maritime rescue coordination center in Colombo. More the news. MRCC are a part of international network under the UN's International Maritime Organization to monitor the sea lanes with the objective of swift response to emergencies such as vessels in distress, rescue and evacuation of people, and prevention of and containing environmental disasters such as oil spills, etc. Each country is responsible for its own search and rescue region. MRCC is coordinated by the Navy or Coast Guard in each country. In India, the Coast Guard is the coordinating agencies. India-Sri Lanka relations क्या हैं? India-Sri Lanka signed free trade agreement in 2000. Sri Lanka remains among the largest trade partners of India in the SAARC. India is also one of the largest contributors to foreign direct investments in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is one of the India's major development partners. India grants amount to around $570 million. India hosting projects countrywide 1990 emergency ambulance service are among the India's flagship grant projects in Sri Lanka. Buddhism is one of the strongest pillars connecting the two nations from the time when the great Emperor Ashoka sent his children Arat Mahinda and Sangamitta to spread the teachings of Lord Buddha at the request of King Devanam Piya Tissa of Sri Lanka. Then India Sri Lanka Foundation was set up in 1988 as an intergovernmental initiative to enhance the cooperation through civil society exchanges in the younger generations. The government of India launched the e-tourist visa scheme for Sri Lanka tourists. India and Sri Lanka are members of multilateral groups such as SAARC, BIMSTEC, IORA, NAM, ADB, UN, etc. Then comes Kachativu Islands. Yes, Kachativu Islands. Why in the news? During the Prime Minister's visit to Tamil Nadu Chief Minister has asked for retrieval of Kachativu Island from Sri Lanka. ये important अभी मोदी ने बोला है in the no conference motion. Yes, about Kachativu Island. Kachativu is a small, uninhabited island in Park Strait which connects the Bay of Bengal to the Arabian Sea. Kachativu Island was formed due to the volcanic eruptions in the 14th century. It was jointly administered by India and Sri Lanka during British rule. The Kachativu issue emerged when both countries signed 4 maritime boundary agreements between 1974 and Island became part of Sri Lanka according to India-Sri Lanka agreements. However, the continuing dispute is over. Sri Lanka repeatedly denying access to Indian fishers to rest and dry their nets as provided under the 1974 Accords. Then India Afghanistan में आता है भाई क्या है? India has reopened its embassy in the Kabul after nearly 10 months of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. Other facts on India and Afghanistan after Taliban takeover: India conducted Operation Devi Shakti to evacuate people, including its citizens and Afghan partners, from Afghanistan after the Taliban takeover. At 4th Regional Security Dialogue on Afghanistan in Dushanbe, the Indian National Security Advisor called for enhancing Afghanistan's capability to counter terrorism. India had earlier taken a strong position against any kind of engagement with Taliban. However, considering its own geopolitical and strategic interests, India is engaging with Taliban but on its own terms. देख अदर रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशंस में क्या आता है? ऑपरेशन सुकून 2006 में to evacuate Indians, Sri Lankans and Nepali citizens from war hit Lebanon. Then Operation Safe Homecoming 2011 to evacuate Indian citizens fleeing from the civil war in Libya. Operation Rahat 2015 to evacuate Indians as well as foreign citizens from conflict hit Yemen. Operation Ganga 2022 to evacuate Indians from the Ukraine. Then India-Afghanistan relations क्या है? India shares land border of 106 km with Afghanistan along with the Union Territory of Ladakh. India-Afghanistan relations can be traced back to the Indus Valley Civilization. Treaty of friendship between India and Afghanistan was signed in 1949 and India is a major export destination of Afghanistan. India and Afghanistan signed a preferential trade agreement under which India allowed substantial duty concessions ranging from the 50% to 100% to certain category of Afghan dry fruits. India is by far one of the top donors to Afghanistan. India-Afghanistan air freight corridor became operational in 2017. Then from 2002 से 2021 India spent $4 billion in developmental assistance in Afghanistan. This includes Afghanistan's parliament in Kabul, reconstruction of Salma Dam, construction of Zaran Dilaram Road, etc. Then comes India-Maldives. India-Maldives, why in the news? Recently, India-Maldives signs 6 agreements in the area of cybersecurity, disaster management, social housing, etc. to maintain stability in the Indian Ocean regions. India announced the $100 million fresh lines of credit for the Greater Malay Connectivity Projects, GMCP, in India funded infrastructure project to link Mail with its nearby islands of Willingly, Gulifalu and Thilafushi. Both the countries have signed a security cooperation pact with a credit line from India for capacity building in the maritime domain. Maldives is a part of Colombo's Security Conclave initiated by India, which envisages peaceful cooperations in the Indian Ocean along with Sri Lanka and Mauritius. The National Colleges for Policing and Law Enforcement. India's largest grant project in Maldives was recently inaugurated in Addu City, Maldives. Maldives president issued decree banning India Out campaign. India Out campaign was regarded as an organized campaign that aims to disrupt relations between the two countries by inciting unrest. One of the reasons for this was cooperation between the two sides in 2021 to develop a harbour on the Uthuru Thilafalu atoll for the Maldivian coast guards, as it was rumored that there were Indian military personnel stationed there. India-Maldives relations क्या हैं? India-Maldives relations क्या हैं? India is Maldives' second largest trading partner. India bilateral trade crossed 300 million mark for the first time in the 2021. Maldives has a special place in India's neighboring First policy, India-Maldives resolved the political contentious issues over the Minicoy Island through the Maritime Boundary Treaty of 1976. Recognizing Minicoy as a part of India. In 2016, India-Maldives signed a comprehensive action plan for defense. Then Equivalent is a major joint military exercise between the Indian and Maldives Army, and Maldives is also part of the Sagar. Okay, then other important news क्या है? Trans-Himalayan multidimensional connectivity network. China and Nepal agreed to build Trans-Himalayan multidimensional connectivity network. About the Trans-Himalaya multidimensional connectivity network, the Trans-Himalaya multidimensional connectivity network, also referred as the Trans-Himalaya network, is an economic corridor proposed in 2019 Nepal between the Nepal and China as a part of China's BRI. The corridor aims to enhance the connectivity in ports, roads, railways, aviation, and communication. The Trans-Himalaya multimodal connectivity network aims to pave the way for the more integration between the China and the rest of South Asia. And Global Security Initiative is an initiative proposed by China. According to China, the new Global Security Initiative will work against the Cold War mentality or hegemonism, power politics, and bloc confrontation. That will counter the US Indo-Pacific strategic quad, and AUKUS. Then Porcupine strategy. Taiwan is focusing on the Porcupine strategy to fight back in the case China attacks it. Porcupine is a strategy of asymmetric warfare focused on fortifying a weak state's defenses to exploit enemies' weaknesses rather than taking on its strength. It was proposed in 2008 by the US. Professor William S. Murray aims to make Taiwan's defense so secure that any attacker faces a ruinous cost. Three defensive layers in this approach are: outer layer is about intelligence and reconnaissance, guerrilla warfare at sea, and innermost layer relies on geography and demography of island. Then spectrographic investigation of nebular gas SING project. The tension between India and China is worrying Indian scientists involved in the SING project. SING is a collaboration between Indian Institute of Astronomy and the Russian Academy of Sciences for designing payloads for Tiangong, China's new permanent space station. SING primarily deals with the sending and positioning a spectrograph, an instrument that split lights into constituent frequency and wavelengths to study the ultraviolet radiation. Then Wolf-Warrior diplomacy क्या है? Wolf-Warrior diplomacy describes offensives by Chinese diplomat to defend China's national interest, often in the confrontational ways. Wolf-Warrior diplomacy symbolizes an aggressive and confrontational, even hostile type of diplomacy on a public stage, including on social media. Wolf-Warrior diplomacy is evidenced not only in combative words but aggressive actions. From China's perspective, Wolf-Warrior diplomacy is a direct response to unfair approaches by other countries, especially the US, towards China and Chinese people. Then China Plus One strategy. India could emerge as a semiconductor manufacturing hub as a part of China Plus One diversification strategy. China Plus One is a business strategy to avoid investing only in China and diversifying business into other countries. Started becoming popular in 2018 and gained prominence after the COVID outbreak. Asian Clearing Union RBI announced all eligible current account transactions, including the trade transaction with Sri Lanka, may be settled in any permitted currency outside the Asian Clearing Union. Initiative of UNESCAP 1974 mechanism. ACU's objective is to facilitate payments among the member countries for eligible transactions on a multilateral basis, thereby economizing on the use of foreign exchange reserves and transfer cost. Asian Monetary Unit is the common unit of account of ACU and is denominated as ACU dollar, ACU euro, ACU and yen. Places in the news क्या देख भाई? India and its neighbors Darbak, Shark, Dalbeg, Oldie Road, DSDBO, yes. उसके नीचे आता गोगरा हॉट स्प्रिंग्स. Then comes Pangung So Lake, yes. Then Shinkula Pass. Then West Seti Dam. उससे पहले Manala Pass and then Nechifu Tunnel. Okay. West Seti Dam, Nepal. Seti Dam का नेपाल में. Then Seti is a white river, also known as Seti Gandaki, is a western Nepal river which originates at the Annapurna Massif. It cuts to the Mahabharat range before the joining Trishuli River as a left bank tributary near the Devghat area. It was MOU signed between the Nepal and India to develop West Seti Dam and Seti River SR6 projects. Then Lumbini, Nepal context. Prime Minister of India visited Lumbini, Nepal for the first time. Lumbini is a famous birthplace of Lord Buddha Siddhartha Gautam, located in the Terai plains of the southern Nepal or Ropandehi district of Nepal, 125 kilometers from Gorakhpur in Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The site is now being developed as a Buddhist pilgrimage center, then protected by the Ancient Monument Preservation Act 1956. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Then Gogra Hot Spring area context. India and China as troop began disengagement from patrolling point 15 in Gogra Hot Springs in eastern Ladakh. Earlier, China had refused to pull back its troops from Hot Springs and Gogra posts, which along with the Depsang plains remain the friction points between two sides. PP15 is located in an area known as the Hot Springs, while PP17A is near an area called the Gogra Post. Both are close to Chang Chemo River in Galwan in eastern Ladakh. Area is north of Karakoram range of mountains, which lies north of the Pangong Tso Lake and the southeast of the Galwan Valley. Then comes DSGBO Darbuk Shok Daulat Beg Oldie Road. Context is 225 km road connects Leh to Karakoram Pass, separating Ladakh from China's Xinjiang province. The DSGBO road provides connectivity to India's northernmost outpost of the Daulat Beg Oldie. It is world's highest airstrips, originally built during the 1962 war but abandoned until 2008. DSGBO highway provides the Indian military access to the section of Tibet-Xinjiang highway that passes through the Aksai Chin. The road runs almost parallel to the LSC at Aksai Chin. Then Pangong Tso, context kya hai? The Ministry of External Affairs has confirmed the building of second bridge on the Pangong Tso Lake close to the 2020 border standoff. Pangong Tso meaning high grasslands lake in the Tibetan, and this is the world's highest saltwater lake, situated at a height of 4,350 meters, situated in the Himalayan range on the India-China border. It's an endorphic sinking lake. 160 km, one third lies in India, while remaining two-thirds lie in the China. It is known to change color, appearing blue, green and red at different times. Then Shinkula Pass, context border roads, or BRO will build the world's highest tunnel at Shinkula Pass to connect Himachal to Ladakh under the project Yojak by 2025. It's located between Zaskar Valley in Ladakh and Lahore Valley in Himachal Pradesh. World's longest tunnel is Atal Tunnel at Rohtang. फिर आता है मनाला उत्तराखंड में आता है. Context is PM led Foundation of Connectivity Project for Mana Village, Chamoli district to Mana Pass. Mana Pass, the last point between India and China border and an ancient trade route between India and Tibet. It is also known as Dungrila and located within the Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve. Mana village rests on the banks of river Saraswati and is home to the Bhotias Mongol tribe. Then Nechifu Tunnel's context is BRO conducted final breakthrough blast of Nechifu Tunnel. Nechifu Tunnel is located along the Balipara Charadwar Tawang Road, which connects Balipara in Assam to Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh bordering China. It has been completed under the project Vartak of BRO. Vartak. Then India, Southeast Asia, India, Myanmar. Kya hai? Why the news? Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change suggests to create Myanmar, Malaysia, India, Singapore transit mist corridor in Chennai for CRZ clearance. Then more on the news. MIST is an international submarine cable communication network that will traverse undersea to connect India with Myanmar, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. It will provide secure, reliable, robust and affordable telecom facilities in Asia, with main trunk route being from Tuas in Singapore to Mumbai in India. Then MIST cable system has a total length of 8,100 kilometers. Then Mumbai se Chennai, Myanmar, Thailand. Okay. India Myanmar relations के Myanmar is the only Asian country adjoining India. Myanmar shares a land border of 1643 kilometers with the northeastern India, with states Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram. The bilateral trade between the two countries has for long remained at around $2 billion. India's development assistance portfolio in Myanmar is now over $1.75 billion. The development projects includes the Kaladan multimodal transport project, the trilateral highway project, the Rakhine State Development Program, and the restoration and conservation of Anand Temple in Bagan. Then both countries are members of the multilateral organizations like BIMSTEC, ASEAN regional forums, Mekong Ganga Corporations, UN, WTO, etc. Then India Vietnam kya hai? Why in the news? India and Vietnam signed mutual logistics agreement. Then more in the news, India and Vietnam have signed a logistics support pact to allow militaries of both sides to use each other's bases for repair and replenishment of their supplies. MOU on mutual logistics support is the first such major agreement that Vietnam has signed with any country. What is other major agreements? The joint vision statement on defense partnerships towards 2030 to enhance the scope and scale of existing defense cooperation. An early finalization of the $500 million defense line of credit extended to Vietnam. India's defense minister visited Tran Co Pagoda, a revered Buddhist temple which reaffirmed the age-old civilizational people-to-people linkages. Then logistic agreements are administrative arrangements facilitating access to military facilities for exchange of fuel and provisions. On mutual agreements simplifying the logistical support. India has signed several logistics agreements with all Quad countries, France, Singapore and South Korea. India-Vietnam relations key facts. Bilateral trade between India and Vietnam is nearly $11 billion. India supports Vietnam through a number of programs such as Mekong Ganga Project, Indian Technical Economic Cooperations, EITEC initiatives, etc. India and Vietnam closely cooperate in the various regional forums such as ASEAN, East Asia Summit, Mekong Ganga Cooperation, East Asia Europe Meeting, and besides UN, Asia Europe Meeting is besides UN and WTO. And then cultural convergence kya hai? Buddhist monks, Java Kalyan Kurey are credited with the establishment of Buddhism in Vietnam during the 2nd century BC. Mahatma Gandhi and Ho Chi Minh, regarded as the father of nation India and Vietnam, respectively, led people in the heroic struggle. Then comes India, Thailand. When the news, India and Thailand completed the 75 years of the diplomatic ties. India-Thailand relations key facts के bilateral trade reached an all-time high of around $15 billion in 2021-22. Thailand initiated a Look West policy. Look West in 1997 that complements with India's Look East policy. Then connectivity projects between the two countries include India, Myanmar, Thailand, Trilateral Highway, Asia Highway Network, BIMSTEC, Transport, Infrastructure and Logistics study under the BIMSTEC framework. Okay, Buddhism is a common thread and millions of Thai Buddhists visit Lumbini, Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, Kushinagar. Both sides cooperate closely in ASEAN East Asia Summit, BIMSTEC, Mekong Ganga Cooperation, MGC and Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA, etc. Then another important news क्या है? Digital first, digital nomad visa and DNV. To deal with the economic impacts of COVID-19, Indonesia has announced DNV for travelers to attract more foreign tourists. DNV would allow remote workers to stay taxes free. Then digital nomad क्या है? They are the people who work remotely while traveling to different places and spending their earned income in the country they are traveling to. They embrace a location independent technology enabled lifestyle that allows them to travel and work remotely anywhere in the internet connected world. Then Eastern Waterways Connectivity Transport Grid क्या है? Eastern Waterways Connectivity Transport Grid. Ministry of Ports, Shippings and Waterways plans to develop Eastern Waterways Connectivity Transport Grid to boost regional integration and trade with South Asia and Eastern South Asia. It's a part of India's Act East policy built on the existing network of India-Bangladesh protocol route. This will be linked further to Myanmar, Malaysia, Singapore and Thailand. Then comes Andaman Aceh link. India-Indonesia Joint Task Force reviewed challenges in forging connectivity between Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Aceh province. Envisioned in 2018 under the shared vision of maritime cooperation in Indo-Pacific, Andaman-Aceh link connects Sabang city of Aceh province, Indonesia with Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Around 90 nautical miles from Andaman and Nicobar, the Great Channel on the 6-degree channel separates Nicobar from Aceh province. Sabang overlooks the Andaman Sea and Straits of Malacca, making it strategically important for India with other benefits like boosting tourism in Andaman and Nicobar. Then Andaman-Aceh link. Vizag Port Blair, ठीक है, Chennai Port Blair, Campbell, ठीक है. Places in the news क्या है? Cambodia, Philippines, okay. Strait of Malacca and all Indo corporate. India West Asia, India Israel देखते हैं. India West Asia, okay. India Israel defense ministers held bilateral talks where the India Israel vision on defense cooperation was adopted. For enhancing the cooperation in the field of the futuristic defense technologies, the initiatives with Israel क्या है? India-Israel Industrial R&D and Technological Innovation Fund I4F. I4F is a cooperation between India and Israel to promote, facilitate and support joint industrial R&D projects between the companies from India and Israel to address challenges in the agreed focus sectors. Both countries have assigned a 3-year work program 2021 से 23 for development in the agriculture cooperation to benefit local farmers. India and Israel are negotiating a free trade agreement. India-Israel relations क्या है? Defense. India is the largest buyer of military equipment from Israel. Israel accounts for 13% of the Indian imports. CIPRI 2021, including critical defense technologies and joint development projects. Example, missile like Barak 8, surface-to-air missiles and Spike, anti-tank guided missiles. Spike क्या है? एक anti-tank guided missile and UAVs like Harop and Heron. And India is benefiting from the Israeli expertise and technologies in horticulture, micro irrigations, etc. India is Israel's third largest trading partner in 2021. Then para-diplomacy, Uttar Pradesh has signed a plan of cooperation with Israel to resolve water crisis in Budelkhand region. एक para-diplomacy क्या होती है? It's defined as the foreign policy capacity of sub-state entities, which includes states of federations and autonomous entities of otherwise unitary states. Their participation independent of their metropolitan state in the international arena in pursuit of their own specific international interests. And comes two state solutions. Why in the news? The recent UNSC session, India asserted that long-term peace in Israel and Palestine can be achieved through negotiations on the two-state solutions. About two-state solution, it means that an independent sovereign Palestine state and an independent sovereign Israeli state would coexist in a peace. Then two-state solution was agreed upon in 1991 during US-mediated Madrid Peace Conference. Okay, then in India's Israel-Palestine policy, India voted against the creation of Israel in historic Palestine in 1947 in the UNGA. During the Cold War era, India remained strong supporters of the Palestinian freedom, taking
moral and legal position against Israeli occupation in line with the international laws and norms. India established a full diplomatic relations with Israel in 1992. Since 2018, India is adopting a de-hyphenation policy, which means that India's relationship with Israel would stand on its own merits, independent and separate from India's relationship with Palestine. Then India, Saudi Arabia were in the news. Recently, the ministerial meeting of India Saudi Arabia Strategic Partnership Council was held. More on the news, SPC was Strategic Partnership Council was instituted in 2019 during the visit of Indian Prime Minister to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It has two main pillars, that is political security, social and cultural committee and committee on economic and investments. Then related news, Middle East Green Initiatives. Middle East Green Initiatives 2022 summit was held recently. It's Saudi Arabia led regional dialogue on climate law in 2021 to bring together leaders from the across MENA region, that is Middle East or North Africa and beyond. The aims of MGI are reducing carbon emissions from regional hydrocarbon production by more than 60%, plant 50 billion trees across the Middle East and restore an area equivalent to 200 million hectares of degraded land. It can help in reducing global carbon levels by 2.5%. And India, Saudi Arab relations kya hai? Saudi Arab is India's fourth largest trading partner with bilateral trade valuing at $42.86 billion. Saudi Arabia is a key supplier of hydrocarbons to India, supplying 18 and 30% of India's crude oil and LPG requirements respectively. There are over 2.8 million Indian expatriates. India's e-migrate system has been integrated with the kingdom's e-Thothic system to streamline the migration process for workers. Then cultural cooperation. Saudi Arabia is a home to holy cities of Makkah and Medina, where thousands of Indian visits for the annual Hajj and Umrah pilgrimages. Then MOU on yoga cooperation was signed recently. MOU first time by any country in the Gulf region. Then defense cooperation has bilateral exercise Al Moedal Hindi. Bilateral exercise क्या है? Al Moedal Hindi. Then India Saudi Arab Joint Committee on Defense Cooperation to comprehensively review and guide all aspects of bilateral defense cooperation. India and Saudi Arab are members of multilateral forums such as UN, G20 and ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Banks, etc. Then comes India UAE में आता है. India UAE Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement entered into force. More on the news, it is expected to increase the total value of bilateral trade in goods to over $800 billion and in services to over $15 billion with 5 years. The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is likely to benefit about $26 billion worth of Indian products that are currently subjected to 5% import duty by UAE, or around 90% of the products exported from India to UAE will attract zero duty. It provides for a permanent safeguard mechanism to deal with sudden surge in imports of any products. Then Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is a bilateral agreement that covers trades in goods and services, investment, competition, and IPR. Rules of origins are used to determine if products are eligible for duty-free or reduced duties under the trade agreement. Then automatic registrations and marketing authorization of the Indian generic medicines once they are approved in developed countries. It has also stringent rules of origin reflecting requirements for substantial process of up to 40% value addition. Then India UAE relations क्या हैं? UAE is India's third biggest trading partner behind the US and China. Defense and security may regular military exercise like Desert Eagle for maritime cooperation. Both countries jointly committed to fight extremism and all forms of terrorism. UAE has the highest number of Indian diaspora, that is 3.5 million, contributing higher remittances to India. ISRO launched UAE's first nano satellite Knife 1. NIPL, an international arm of the NPCI, has announced that Beam UPI is now available at the NeoPay terminals across the UAE. Then globally, UPI is accepted in Bhutan and Nepal and is likely to go live in the Singapore later 2022. India and UAE are the members of multilateral forums such as UN, WTO, ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Banks and IORA, etc. देख यहाँ पर देख ले कि ये क्या स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज में आता है. राल खमीन, उमाल क्वाइन, अजमान, शारजा, अल फुजरदी, दोहा. देन इंडिया, इजराइल, यूएई, यूएसए, I2U2 क्या है? Recently, the first leaders summit of I2U2, India, Israel, UAE, US was held virtually. About I2U2 was the first mentioned in October 2021 following the Abraham Accords between the Israel and UAE to deal with the issues concerning maritime security, infrastructure and transport in the region. It was established as an international forum to discuss common areas of mutual interest, strengthen economic partnerships and trade and investments in respective regions and beyond. The I2U2, referred to as the Western Asian Quad, I2U2 lacks military angle and focuses on the economy. Abraham Accords, a series of peace agreements between Israel and Saudi Arab, several Arab countries, UAE being the first. In 2020, it was mediated by USA between the UAE, Bahrain, and Israel. The name of Abram refers to the great father of faith of three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's a symbolic title that promotes unity between the Arabic and Jewish people by recognizing the shared patriarch. It has identified 6 areas of cooperation in water, energy, transportation, space, health, and food security. It intends to mobilize private sector capital and expertise to help modernize infrastructure, low carbon development pathways for industries, improve public health, and promote development of critical emerging and green technologies. Then GCC में आता है India's bilateral trade with the GCC grows at rapid pace. Yeah, the significance of India GCC relations क्या trade and commerce. GCC is currently India's largest trading partner bloc with bilateral trade in FY 2021-22 valued at over $154 billion. India GCC does not have a FTA. GCC along with Iraq accounted for nearly 1/5 of India's total trade in 2021-22 Energy security. GCC is substantial oil and gas reserves are of utmost importance for India's energy needs. Saudi Arabia and UAE are the leading sources of crude oil imports for India. Remittances क्या GCC countries accounted for more than 50% of the total remittances flow into India. Expatriate population UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait together accounted for over half of NRIs. GCC is a political and economic alliance of 6 countries in the Gulf region. The objective is coordination, integration, and interconnection between member states in all fields. The members are Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE. India is not a member. Then places in the news क्या है? Turkey ठीक है, Nagorno Karabakh, Syria, Western Bank, Qatar ठीक है. Okay, Red Sea part of the great Red Sea की countries याद किया ठीक है. West Bank तो याद है. Nagorno Karabakh yes. Context Armenia is witnessing the growing anti-government unrest over the Nagorno Karabakh region. Political and boundaries क्या है? It's a disputed territory between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Conflict Karabakh Armenia demands transferring Karabakh from Soviet Azerbaijan to Soviet Armenia. The Minsk group was created by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe to facilitate talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan to find peaceful solutions to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. The group was co-chaired by the Russia, US, and France. Fourth is Turkey. Ankara. Context. The 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck Turkey and western Syria, leading to the widespread damage and thousands of fatalities. UN has changed name of Turkey to Turkey after Turkey to Turkey after the Turkish government requested to do it. So, the president of Turkey approved the changes in the electoral laws to bolster this rule. Turkey is a large peninsula that bridges continents of Europe and Asia. है ना वही Anatolia Plateau. Then geographical features क्या? It constitutes major part of Anatolia Plateau. It's a predominantly mountainous country and lowland is confined to the coastal fringes. Narrow straits include the Bosphorus, Sea of Marmara and Dardanelles are collectively known as the Turkish Straits part of it. Then comes Jordan. Okay, Jordan is a Middle Eastern country in the Arabian Peninsula. Al-Aqaba only port of Jordan provides a short coastline to Jordan at the Gulf of Aqaba. Red Sea. Context क्या है इसका? Amid challenges to fertilizer, India and Jordan have assigned current year and long-term MOUs for assured fertilizer supply to India. Then Qatar, ठीक है, capital Doha, Syria and all. India, Russia, Central Asia. Eastern Economic Forum क्या है on the news? Prime Minister virtually attended the 7th Eastern Economic Forum hosted by Russia and Vladivostok. About Eastern Economic Forum, the Eastern Economic Forum was established in 2015 to encourage foreign investments in the Russia's Far East region. Eastern Economic Forum displays the economic potential, suitable business conditions and investment opportunities in the region. The forum aimed at connecting the Far East with the Asia Pacific region. About Russia's Far East region, Far Eastern Filled District is the easternmost part of the Russia and borders the Pacific and Arctic Oceans in 5 countries. There is China, Japan, Mongolia, US and North Korea. The region encompasses 1/3 of the Russia's territories and is rich with natural resources such as fish, oil, natural gas, wood, diamonds, coal and other minerals. The Russian government has strategically developed the region with the aim of connecting Russia to Asian trading routes. China is the biggest investor in the region, followed by South Korea and Japan. Initiatives by India and RFE region क्या Niti Aayog and Ministry of Development of the Russian Far East and Arctic are working on a plan to develop Arctic and Russia's Far East between the 2020 and 2025. India offered a $1 billion line of credit to develop infrastructure in the region, and the oil and natural gas ONGC purchased stakes in the Sakhalin-1 project in the region. Then India, Japan, Russia concluded their first track 2 negotiations about the joint Far East projects. India-Russia relations key facts क्या? Defense partnerships. BrahMos cruise missile program, Sukhoi Su-30 and tactical transport aircraft. Energy security में Russia has built nuclear reactors in India, Kundan Kulam reactors. Both are extending civil nuclear cooperation to third countries. एग्जाम्पल बांग्लादेश. देन स्पेस टेक्नोलॉजीज में आता है द फॉर्मर सोवियत यूनियन लॉन्च इंडियाज फर्स्ट टू सैटेलाइट्स आर्यभट्टा एंड भास्कर. It has provided cryogenic technologies to build heavy rockets. Then multilateral cooperation. Russia supported the India's bid for permanent seat in UNSC and favoring Indian entry to NSG. Both countries coordinate with each other various forums including BRICS, SCO, G20, etc. Then cultural relations में आता है Namaste Russia programs and sharing educational brilliance to institutes like JNCC, yes, Jawaharlal Nehru Cultural Center. Then comes Geneva Conventions and Russia-Ukraine war. Why news? Geneva Conventions and the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia troops who were accused of violating Geneva Conventions in ongoing war. About Geneva Conventions. Geneva Conventions are set of 4 treaties formalized in 1949 and 3 additional protocols. Geneva Conventions have been set up. Geneva Conventions are set of 4 treaties formalized in 1949 and 3 additional protocols. Geneva Conventions have been ratified by 196 states, including all UN member states. 3 protocols have been ratified by the 174, 169, 79 states respectively. Geneva Convention, what it covers? First, protects wounded and sick soldiers on the land during war. Also extends to medical and religious personnel, medical units and medical transport. Then second, protects wounded, sick and shipwrecked military personnel at sea during war. Also extends to hospital, ships and medical transports by sea. And third, applies to all prisoners of war, including a wide range of general protections such as human treatment, maintenance and equality across prisoners, etc. Fourth, protects civilians. 3 additional protocols, protocol 1 and 2 and 3 में क्या आता है? 1 and 2 पहले. They strengthen the protection of victims of international and non-international armed conflicts. And second, third में आता है created an additional emblem, the red crystal, which has the same international status as the Red Cross and Red Crescent emblems. India, Turkmenistan, why in the news? President of India paid a state visit to the Turkmenistan, which is the first ever visit by an Indian president to Turkmenistan. About India-Turkmenistan relations क्या हैं? Indus Valley Civilization. Archaeological finds in South Turkmenistan have revealed contacts with Indus Valley Civilization. Turkmen Gate, built in Delhi in 1650s, also testifies to centuries-old ties between India and Turkmenistan. India was one of the first countries to recognize Turkmenistan's independence in 1991 and establish formal diplomatic relations in 1992. Central Asia's first yoga and traditional medicine center was inaugurated in Ashgabat in July 2015. Major initiatives with Central Asian countries क्या? Connect first. Central Asia policy, a broad-based approach including the political security, economic and cultural connections. Then second, international north-south transport corridor, INSTC. It encompasses ship, rail, roads. Routes connecting India with Russia, Central Asia and European via Iran. India was also planning to include Chabahar port in the INSTC framework. TAPI, पता है, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India project है ना. Project aims to transport 33 billion cubic meters of gas from Turkmenistan's Galkanish gas field to Afghanistan, Pakistan and finally India through the proposed 18-14 kilometer long pipeline, also called the Peace Pipeline. Ashgabat Agreement. It aims to establish the international multimodal transport and transit corridor between Central Asia and Persian Gulf. Then India, Central Asia relationships क्या हैं? Part of India's extended neighborhood. India has strategic relations with the most of Central Asian countries. In India, in January 2022, India hosted the first India Central Asia Summit, coinciding with the 30 years of diplomatic relations between India and Central Asian countries. India is a member of both INSTC and Ashgabat Agreement. India has taken steps to expand connectivity through Chabahar port in Iran for a secure, viable and unhindered access to the sea for the Central Asian countries. And India has signed MOUs to provide grant assistance for implementation of high-impact community development project for socio-economic development in Central Asia. Then comes INSTC, yes, very important. Why in the news? Iran started transfer of Russian goods to India by using INSTC. About INSTC is a 7,200 kilometer multimodal transportation network, first envisaged in those are by Russia and Iran, India to promote transportation cooperation among the member states. INSTC connects Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf to Caspian Sea, while Iran is then connected to St. Petersburg and North European by Russia. Currently it has 13 members, that is India, Iran, Russia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Belarus, Turkey, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Oman, Ukraine and Syria. Then INSTC significance for India will cut down the transportation cost of goods as well as transportation time between India and Russia. Then reduce carriage costs between India and Russia by 30%, bring down transit time to less than 25 days compared to 40 days, then will help India to gain smooth access to Central Asia and beyond, will help to expand trade and investment links, then reduce dependence on current trading partners, especially energy connectivity through reliability of supply chains, and also being seen as India's answer to China's Belt Road initiatives, India's corridor through energy-rich Central Asia, Arctic, Nordic, Baltic region, then other planned corridor connecting India with Russia and Europe, क्या है Chennai, Vladivostok maritime corridor, and India's Arabian Mediterranean corridor, connecting India with mainland Europe via Paris port of Greece and Middle East. Then Chabar port क्या है? Why in the news? Recently, India observed the Chabar Day, where India and Iran reviewed the progress of Chabar port and INSTC transcontinental trade route. More about the Chabar port is located in Sistan and Balochistan province in the southern eastern part of Iran on the Gulf of Oman. It is the only deep sea port in India with direct ocean access. It's a key transit center on the burgeoning international north-south transport corridor. India, Afghanistan and Iran signed a deal to establish the INSTC Chabar Agreement, International Transport and Transit Corridor Chabar Agreement 2016 में. This involved construction of the rail line from Chabar port to Zaidan along the border with Afghanistan, linking to the Zaran-Dilaram highway, yes, and an alternative trade route to the Afghanistan and Central Asia. Zaran-Dilaram highway in Afghanistan is a 215 km long highway that was already built in Afghanistan through assistance provided by India. India aims to make Chabar port a transit hub under the INSTC to reach out to CIS countries. अब CIS countries कौन सी है? अजरबैजान, आर्मेनिया, बेलारूस, कजाकिस्तान, किर्गिस्तान, मोल्डोवा, रशिया, ताजिकिस्तान, तुर्कमेनिस्तान, उज्बेकिस्तान and Ukraine. Then India's other cross-border connectivity initiatives क्या हैं? Places in the news now: Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. ठीक है. ये है रशिया यूक्रेन रीजन्स में. अच्छा, ओके. ब्लैक सीज एंड खेरसोन, ज़पोरिज़िया, कर्च स्टेट, डोनेट्स्क, मारियोपोल, खार्किव, किर्गिस्तान, खरसोन कहाँ पे? कंटेक्स्ट द प्रॉक्सी गवर्नमेंट इन खरसोन रीजन अनाउंस दैट ऑल न्यूबॉर्न्स वुड बी ग्रांटेड रशियन सिटीजनशिप. खेरसोन. इंडो पैसिफिक, India US relations क्या है? Key facts: the trade and economic relations. US was India's top trading partner in 2021 से by surpassing China. US replaced Mauritius as the second largest source of foreign direct investments into India during the 2021. So US is one of the type 5 investment destination for India FDI. For Indian FDI. So defense cooperation में India US defense cooperation is based on the new framework for India US defense cooperation. US recognized India as a major defense partner in 2016. Several defense agreements have signed like LEMOA, है ना, Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Association August 2016. Communication Compatibility COMCASA, Communication Compatibility and Security Agreement 2018. Then ISA, Industrial Security Agreement 2019. Then BECA, Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement 2020 में. For bilateral military exercise like Yuddha Abhyas, Vajrapahar, etc. In 2019, a tri-services exercise like Tiger Triumph was conducted. Then S&T and Space Cooperation in the India-US Science and Technology Cooperation Agreement signed in 2005, which was renewed for a period of 10 years in 2019. The ISRO and NASA were working together to realize a joint microwave remote sensing satellites for Earth observation named NISAR. Diaspora people-to-people ties. The Indian Americans, 3.18 million, considered the third largest Asian ethnic groups in the US. International cooperation. UN, G20, Association of Southeast Asian Nation, ASEAN regional forums, IMF, World Bank and WTO. Then the 2+2 dialogue क्या? The fourth 2+2 dialogue between India and the US was held in Washington DC. Key highlights क्या? Both sides look forward to India's co-hosting of the Indo-Pacific Armies Chief Conference and Indo-Pacific Armies Management Seminar in 2023. Both countries look forward to the expansion of the USAID supported COVID-19 learning exchange virtual platform to include programs for more population groups and allow cities and health officials to share best practices. Discussed NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar NISAR satellite planned for launch from India in 2023 to revitalize the defense technology and trade initiatives with joint projects on advanced emerging and critical military technologies. India and USA signed project agreement for air launch unmanned aerial vehicle under the DTTI. The 2+2 dialogue is a format of meeting of foreign and defense ministers of India and its allies on strategic and security issues. The 2+2 ministerial dialogue enables the partners to better understand and appreciate each other's strategic concerns and sensitivities, taking into account political factors on both sides. India has 2+2 dialogues with 4 key strategic partners: US, Australia, Japan, Russia. Related news क्या? Countering America's through countering American advisories to Sanctions Act. U.S. House of Representatives passed the legislative amendment that exempts India from economic sanctions under the countering Americans advisories to Sanctions Act for purchasing the S-400 missile defense system from Russia in 2018 to help deter aggressor like China. CAATSA is a law that came into effect in the US in the 2017 and was meant to punish countries having a deep engagements with Russia, North Korea, or Iran using economic sanctions. However, the application of CAATSA is not limited to the S-400. It may include other joint ventures for the manufacturing or developing weapons in the future. US has already imposed sanctions on the Turkey under the CAATSA for purchase of S-400 missile system from Russia. S-400 is a mobile, long-range surface-to-air missile system. S-400 Triumph has a capability to protect against almost all sorts of aerial attacks, including drones, missile, rockets, and even fighter jets. Then India, Japan, why in the news? Recently, India and Japan completed 70 years of establishment of diplomatic relations. Economic and cooperation, commercial cooperation क्या है? Comprehensive SEPA economic partnership agreement exists between the two since 2011. Japan is the biggest bilateral donor to India with Japanese official development assistance. ठीक है? Okay, so India and Japan are working with Australia on the supply chain resiliency initiative SCRI. Okay, India and Japan are working with Germany and Brazil for permanent membership of the UNSC as G4 or Group of 4. Then ISRO and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency are working on a joint lunar polar exploration mission. LUPEX. The mission aims to send a lander and rover to the moon's south pole around 2024. India and Japan signed a mutual logistic agreement, acquisition and cross-servicing agreement. Both countries launched India-Japan Emerging Technologies and Innovation Fund in 2019. India and Japanese forces regularly hold joint exercises like Shinyo-Maitri, Dharma Guardian Army, Jimex Navy, Sayo Kajin Coast Guard and Malabar Navy. Then Japanese Zen Garden Kaizen Academy was inaugurated at the Ahmedabad Management Association in Gujarat. The key bilateral cooperations in the Indo-Pacific integrated Indo-Pacific strategy, mutual logistic and supply agreement, and Asia-Africa growth corridor, quadrilateral security dialogue or Quad and supply chain resiliency initiatives. Then related news kya former Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe assassinated. India finds a special mention in his book Utsukushi Kunii towards the beautiful country. That's its contribution to India-Japan relationships kya hai? Special strategic and global partnership between India and Japan for peace and security in the region. Under Abe, Japan made for a tenth of India's FDI with support for major projects including the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail corridor. He supported India's entry into the 4 international export control regime with increased cooperation in defense equipment and technology. For his contribution, Indian government gave prestigious Padma Bhushan to him in 2021. Then India-Australia Economic and Cooperation Trade Agreement recently came into force. About Economic Cooperation Trade Agreement, ECTA provides an institutional mechanisms to encourage and improve trade between the two countries and covers almost all tariff lines held by India and Australia. It is the first trade agreement of India with a developed country after more than a decade. After the India-UAE Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, ECTA will be the second trade agreement for India that will be operationalized this year. Key provisions of the agreement provides zero duty access to 96% of India's export to Australia, including the shipments from key sectors such as engineering goods, gems and jewellery, textile industry. Then Indian graduates from STEM will be granted extended post-study work visa. Australia agreed to amend its domestic tax law to stop taxation of the offshore income of the Indian firms providing technical services in Australia. A separate annex on pharmaceutical products, which will enable fast-track approval for patented generic and biosimilar medicines, covers areas like rules of origin, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, dispute settlement, movement of natural persons, etc. देख अब आता है इंडिया ऑस्ट्रेलिया रिलेशंस देखते हैं इकोनॉमिक में. ऑस्ट्रेलिया इज द 17th लार्जेस्ट ट्रेडिंग पार्टनर ऑफ इंडिया. India is Australia's 7th largest trading partner and 6th largest export market, driven by the coal and international education. Then defense is a comprehensive strategic partnerships in defense signed a deal for reciprocal access to military bases for logistics. Established 2+2 security dialogue. Australian Navy is a part of Malabar naval exercise hosted by India. IAAF participated in the exercise Pitch Black to be hosted by Australia. Civil nuclear cooperation agreement, regular military exercise like Austendex, Austrahand, etc. Then presence on the regional and multilateral groupings, Quad, trilateral supply chain initiatives, Australia and India, Indonesia trilateral forums and Indo-Pacific Economic Forum. Other recent developments, MOUs was signed between Indian Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and Australia for technical cooperation for Australia and India water security initiatives, AWASI, to support cooperation between Australia and India on the urban water security and management, then cooperation in joint projects involving the rare earth metal minerals like lithium and cobalt, then Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, IPEF. Why in the news? Recently, India agreed to be a part of IPEF. IPEF is a US-led framework for 14 participating countries to solidify their relationships and engage in crucial economic and trade matters that concern the region, such as building resilient supply chains and battered by the pandemic. Then, key features kya? Grouping is intended to counter aggressive and non-transparent trade and economic policies of China in the Indo-Pacific. It's not a free trade agreement. It's not a free trade agreement. It's more about standard setting and facilitating trade and will not involve more market access for its member, nor will it negotiate lower tariffs. Framework would open to other countries willing to join in the future. Countries current IPF members kya hai? Australia, Brunei, Fiji, India, Indonesia, Japan, ROK, Malaysia, New Zealand, Philippines, Singapore, USA, Vietnam and Thailand. 4 pillars of IPEF, very important: trade, supply chain, clean energy, decarbonization and infrastructure, and tax and anti-corruption. Note, countries are free to join or not join initiatives under any of stipulated pillars but are expected to adhere to all commitments once they enroll. As of now, India agreed on 3 out of 4 pillars related to supply chains, tax and anti-corruption and clean energy. Significance of IPEF for India kya hai? Participating in the regional trade provides a platform for negotiations, better economic opportunities, countering China in the Indo-Pacific and participating in the resilient supply chains about India-Pacific. It's a geographical construct that has emerged as a substitute to the long prevalent Asia-Pacific. Different countries interpret the region differently. Then importance of Indo-Pacific kya? 44% of India world's land area, 65% of world's population, 62% of world's GDP and 46% of world's merchandise trade. Then Bay of Bengal padhte hain. Russia, recently Nalanda University has launched multidisciplinary research center for Bay of Bengal studies on occasion of World Maritime Day. More the news, opening of CBAS was announced by India at the 4th BIMSTEC DOB Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation Summit in Nepal in 2018. The CBS will offer collaborations in areas such as geoeconomics, geopolitics, ecology, trade, connectivity, maritime security, law, culture, heritage, blue economy, and to generate opportunities of Bay region. This will strengthen India's overall framework for maritime engagement. The initiatives taken by India with respect to BOBs kya hai? Indian Ocean Naval Symposium. It is led by Indian Navy that provides a platform for military leaders of region to discuss regional challenges, for example, terrorism, privacy, piracy, etc. The naval exercise kya hai? India hosts exercise Milan, a biennial naval exercise among the littoral navies of BOB, Southeast Asia and Indian Ocean community to enhance better understanding among navies of the region. In white shipping agreements, it allows for exchange of information on commercial shipping. India currently has a white shipping agreements with Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and has ongoing conversations to sign the agreement with Thailand and Indonesia. Tsunami warning system, to provide early warning in case of tsunami and avoid devastations caused by 2004 tsunamis. And Project Mausam, the initiative of Ministry of Culture to collaborate with several countries of the Indian Ocean region to understand knowledge and manipulation of monsoon winds in pre-modern period. Okay. And comes AUKUS. More important news, AUKUS. China has reportedly withdrawn its draft resolution against AUKUS grouping at the International Atomic Energy Agency. This has come in the backdrop of India's deft and impactful diplomacy, where India helped many smaller countries take a clear stand on the Chinese proposal. AUKUS is a new three-way strategic defense alliance between Australia, UK, US. Key objectives is to build a class of nuclear-propelled submarines, work together in the Indo-Pacific region where the rise of China is seen as an increasing threat, and develop wider technologies. International Atomic Energy Agency. Kya hai? International Atomic Energy Agency is the world's central intergovernmental forum for scientific and technical cooperation in the nuclear field. Origin is established as an autonomous international organization within the United Nations system. The objective is to deter the spread of nuclear weapons by the early detection of the misuse of nuclear material or technology. Members are the 176. Gambia is the last to join in 2023. Other key information in IAEA is not party to NPT. Awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2005. India is a member, yes. Then partners in the Blue Pacific care. As a response to China's aggressive outreach to Pacific Island states, US along with Australia, New Zealand, UK and Japan announced new PBP initiatives. Earlier, China had released a draft agreement called Common Developmental Vision that spoke about China wanting to expand law enforcement cooperation with Pacific nations. About PBP kya hai? Partners in the Blue Pacific is a five-nation informal mechanism to support Pacific Islands and to boost diplomatic economic ties in the region. It aims to enhance prosperity, resilience, security in the Pacific through closer cooperation. It will elevate Pacific regionalisms and forge stronger ties with Pacific Island Forum. Its an areas of cooperation includes climate crisis, connectivity, transportation, maritime security, etc. Then reciprocal access agreement क्या है? Recently, Japan, Australia signed reciprocal access agreement. Reciprocal access agreement is a new agreement to cooperate closely on the defense to bolster security ties against backdrop of rising Chinese military and economic might in the Indo-Pacific region. Then India, UAE, France trilateral meet क्या है? India, UAE, France to hold their maiden trilateral meeting. Objectives of the meet is to explore potential cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region, including maritime security, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, blue economy, regional connectivity, cooperations in multilateral fora, energy and food security, startups, etc. India, UAE, France trilateral and significance क्या है? Boost cooperations in the Indo-Pacific under the trilateral framework, advance strategic economy in the Western Indian Ocean regions or Arabian Sea to ensure energy and regional security. Critical for India's global footprint as well as success of India's Act East policy, Look West policy, Sagar, etc. Opportunities to work towards shared goals of free and open Indo-Pacific. Then mineral security partnerships क्या है? India raised concerns over not being part of US-led mineral security partnerships. Then MSP is an international partnership for stable and diverse mineral supply chain. MSP ensures that critical minerals are produced, processed and recycled to support the ability of countries to realize full economic development benefit of their geological endowments. It involves 11 members, that is Korea, US, Canada, Japan, Germany, UK, EU Commission, Finland, France, Australia and Norway. Alliance will focus on supply chains of minerals such as cobalt, nickel, lithium and also 17 rare earth minerals. Indo-Pacific Trilateral Development Cooperation Fund क्या है? As a part of their cooperation, the Indo-Pacific, India and France agreed to work towards establishment of Indo-Pacific Trilateral Development Cooperation Fund. Fund aims to support India-based innovators and startups, explore opportunities to undertake development projects. India's Global Innovation Partnership launched with the UK will provide a template to use TDC fund. India's contribution to GIP will be channelized through TDC fund. Then US-India Strategic Clean Energy Partnerships क्या है? It's a ministerial dialogue of US-India Strategic Clean Energy Partnership held in the USA. The revamped was launched in accordance with US-India Climate and Clean Energy Agenda 2030. US-India Strategic Clean Energy Partnerships है ना? Okay, so scaling of emerging clean energy technologies, deploying technical solutions, partnering countries to advance energy security. Then comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnerships (CPTPP). CPTPP. UK's application to join CPTPP is underway. Yes, CPTPP क्या है? Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnerships. It is entered into force in 2018 and was formerly known as the Trans-Pacific Partnerships. After US withdrawal from TPP, it was renamed with the CPTPP. CPTPP. About it is a free trade agreement between 11 countries in Asia Pacific. It also covers the protection of the environment and labor rights. Members are Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore and Vietnam. India is not a member. Then आता है investment incentive agreement. India and USA have signed IIA है ना, investment incentive agreement superseding the 1997 investment incentive agreement between the two nations. India investment incentive agreement has been signed to keep pace with additional investment support programs offered by the DFC, that is Development Financing Agency of US. It's a legal requirement for DFC to continue providing investment support in India. DFC or their predecessors agencies are active in India since 1974 and have so far provided investment support worth $5.8 billion. Then friend-shoring plan. US keen to deepen India ties under the friend-shoring plan. Friend-shoring is pitched as a means to insulate global supply chains from external disruptions or economic cohesion. India is for a group of countries with shared values to deploy policies encouraging companies to spread manufacturing within that group. Selectors under importance are semiconductor industry, green energy, telecommunications and mineral industries. Significance of friend-shoring will prevent nations from unfairly leveraging their market positions, diversify global supply chain that will also help business become more resilient to external shocks. Then comes places in the new Indo-Pacific region में आता है Kuril Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, Solomon Island, Fiji, Eastern Timor. East Timor. Then Solomon Islands क्या है? Capital Honiara. Context is a recent document revealed that Solomon Island and China reached a deal for an unprecedented level of security cooperation. Physical location: Solomon Islands are archipelago state in Melanesia, located in the southwest Pacific Ocean. ठीक है. Federated State of Micronesia, Eastern Timor, Fiji, Kuril Islands. ठीक है. Kuril Islands तो उधर है ना, जापान के साइड है. Yes. Kuril Islands, as per Japan, disputed islands are illegally occupied by Russia. As per Japan, disputed islands are illegally occupied by Japan. Have called these islands the Northern Territories. Japan claims the Itrup, Konashe, Shikotan, and Hobomai islands. Then India, Europe. European Union. India and the European Union concluded the first round of negotiations of bilateral trade and investment agreements. The more about news, talks on the BTIA, the free trade agreement, was resumed after a gap of about 9 years since the earlier negotiations were left off in 2013 due to the difference in the scope and expectation from the deal. FTO involves agreements on the trade, investment, and geographical indications. Significance of India EU FTA: it will help Indian exporters gain competitive advantage in the EU markets while helping domestic manufacturers get cheaper access to imports from EU. Then EU is considered India's main source of technology transfer and development. EU is also looking for a large market as intra-EU trade remains stagnant and trade with the UK shrinks. Then India and EU. India's bilateral trade with the EU now amounted to US dollar 116.36 billion in 2021-22 tak. Besides the FTA, negotiations were also launched for a standalone investment protection agreement and geographical indicators agreement. Then GI Pact will establish a transparent and predictable regulatory environment to facilitate trade of GI products. Both sides have agreed to institute EU-India Trade and Technology Council for strengthening economic and technological ties. India and the European Commission agreed to launch India-EU Trade and Technology Council. This strategic coordination mechanism will allow both partners to tackle challenges at the nexus of trade, trusted technology, and security. First for India and second for EU, TTC signifies enhanced political value of India in uncertain global strategic environment. Investment Protection Agreement is an agreement with reciprocal understanding to promote and protect private investments made by the nationals. ठीक है. European Union क्या है? It's a political and economic union of the 27 sovereign European member states. It was created by the Maastricht Treaty in 1993. Objective is to promote peace, follow EU's values, and improve well-being of the nations, establish an internal market, protect and improve quality of environment. Members देख क्या है इसके? वो तो ठीक है. अब क्या है? Other European institutions, European Council, European Parliament, European Commission. ठीक है. The European Parliament only directly elected institutions of the European Union. Together with the Council, European Parliament has legislative power, but no power to initiate legislation. European Commission may use political independent executive arm. It is responsible for drawing up proposals for new European legislation and implements decisions of European Parliament and the Council. Other key information: UK left the organization in 2020. Euro area number 20 EU member states. Croatia is the latest to join in 2023. EU has its own flag, anthem, and motto: United in Diversity. India, UK. India, UK. Why in the news, various initiatives have been signed between the India and UK in the recent times. Area of cooperation, trade and prosperity. Major agreements for development can target to conclude the majority of talks on a free trade agreement by the end of October. Finalization of India-UK Global Innovation Partnership. Defense and Security. UK announced an open general export license to 5 state technology engagement with India. Establishment of joint working group on India-UK electric propulsion capability partnership. The joint cyber statement to deepen the cooperation across the cyber governance. Agreed to constitute a subgroup on countering extremism. Then UK-India Young Professional Scheme is under the scheme. UK will offer 3,000 places to 18 to 30-year-old degree-holding Indian nationals to live and work in the UK for up to 2 years. It was signed as a part of UK-India Migration and Mobility Partnership. Scheme will commence in the early 2023 and be on a reciprocal basis. Then UK Niti Aayog collaborative initiatives on the electric mobility. Niti Aayog collaborative initiatives on electric mobility in the backdrop of COP26 precedent to visit to India. Niti Aayog launched the 2 initiatives, namely E-Amrit, that is accelerated e-mobility revolution for India's transportation mobile application to raise awareness on the electric mobility, and report on advanced chemistry cell battery reusage, supported by the UK's Green Growth Fund Technical Cooperation Facility. And reports aims to promote battery recycling of current and evolving battery technologies. ACCR new generation technology that can store electric energy either as a electrochemical or a chemical energy. India UK relations क्या है कि bilateral trade amounts to $41 billion. The UK is the 6th largest investor in India with a cumulative investment of approximately $33 billion. India is the 2nd largest source of the foreign. India and the UK signed a civil nuclear cooperation declaration in 2010. UK has been supportive of India's permanent membership of UNSC and NSG. India and UK signed defense and international security partnerships in 2015. The population of Indian origin is estimated to be around 1.8 to 2 million. Single largest segment of ethnic populations. India is the 2nd largest source of students in studying in UK. India Education and Research Initiative was launched in 2005.
India UK Green Growth Equity Fund is mobilizing institutional investments in the renewable energy, waste management, electric mobility, and environment subsectors in India. India and UK are the members of multilateral forums such as UN, WTO, Commonwealth, and G20. India, France देखते हैं in the news. Indo-French dialogue on bilateral defense cooperation concludes in the Paris. India-France relations क्या है? India has trade surplus with France and bilateral trade stood at nearly $8 billion. International Solar Alliance is joint initiative of both countries launched during the COP21 to promote solar energy. Defense cooperation is India purchased Rafale aircraft and signed contract for 6 Scorpion submarines P-75 project from France. Both sides carry out the 3 biannual training exercises, namely Garud Air Force, Varun Navy and Shakti Army. 2 countries have signed the agreement regarding the provisions of reciprocal logistic supports. India and France signed agreement for cooperation for India's first human space mission Gaganyaan. India is a member of International Thermonuclear Experiment Reactor (ITR) a multinational consortium formed to construct an experimental fusion reactor located in the Cadarche, France. Both signed a civil nuclear agreement in 2008. India joined the French-led initiative called the High Emission Coalition for Nature and People, which aims at protecting at least 30% of world's land and oceans by 2030. Both countries are members of multilateral organizations like G20, UN, IORA, etc. India, Germany देखते हैं. India, Germany signs $10.5 billion Green Deal, Green and Sustainable Development Partnerships (SDGs) to boost Sustainable Development Partnerships to boost clean energy use. The more in the news, various deliverables under the partnerships include develop an Indo-German green hydrogen roadmap, establish an Indo-German renewable energy partnership with focus on innovative solar energy and other renewables, establish a lighthouse cooperations on agroecology and sustainable management of natural resources, deepen cooperations in the restoring forest landscapes under the Bond Challenge, further collaborating on green energy corridors, example the Leh-Haryana transmission line and project of carbon neutral Ladakh. Other initiatives is Indo-German partnerships on green urban mobility to support integration of sustainable modes of transport such as metro, light metros, etc. Niti Aayog BMZ dialogue aimed at strengthening the SDG localization at city level. Indo-German Energy Program to support the implementation of Energy Conservation Act 2008. In June 2002, India and GS7 had agreed to work towards a just energy transition partnership. Then India-Denmark to further strengthen green strategic partnerships in recent meeting. About GSP is established green strategic partnership established in 2020 is a 5-year action plan for green growth and focuses on green hydrogen, renewable energy, circular economy, water management, etc. It specifically focuses on an ambitious implementation of the Paris Agreement and all UN SDGs. Other outcomes of the India-Denmark meetings, they launched India Green Financing initiatives to finance green projects in India for accelerating green growth and job creation in India. India agreed to join the International Center for Antimicrobial Resistance as a mission partner. ICRs is a One Health Research Partnership platform to support the development and implementation of context-specific and cost-effective solutions to tackle AMR, antimicrobial resistance in low and low-middle income countries. Denmark confirmed its accession to the Global Digital Health Partnerships. Global Digital Health Partnerships is a collaboration of governments and territories, government agencies, and the WHO formed to support effective implementation of digital health services. India is a part of GDHP. Then other important news is Global Gateways. Take a Build Back Better World initiatives is launched. The Global Gateways, it's a European Union 300 billion infrastructure fund planned to counter China's Belt Road initiatives. Plan promises to promote high social, environmental, fiscal and labor standards. Other initiatives for infrastructure development क्या Build Back Better World initiative B3W launched during the G7 meet is a value-driven and transparent infrastructure partnerships to help narrow $40+ trillion infrastructure needs in the developing world. Asia-African Growth Corridor and Indian-Japanese collaborative vision regarding development, connectivity and cooperation between Asia and Africa. Then news in the places in the news क्या है वही Okay, Nordic countries, Poland, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, Scotland, Gibraltar, Nord Stream pipeline, ठीक है. India, Africa, then India, Mauritius first. Why in the news? Recently, India, Mauritius Comprehensive Economic Cooperation and Partnership Agreement entered into force about the CECPA. CECPA क्या है बता? Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Partnership Agreement is the first trade agreement signed by the India with a country in Africa. It covers the trade in goods, rules of origin, trades in services, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, dispute settlement, movement of natural persons, telecom, financial services, etc. Like PTA सबसे पहले आता है, then FTA, CECA, custom market, common market, economic market. Then India Mauritius relations क्या हैं? India is a Mauritius
largest trading partner. Bilateral merchandise trade is around US dollar 780 million. Mauritius was third top source of FDI in India after Singapore and USA. Mauritius occupies a special place in India's vision of Sagar. India and Mauritius have signed a wide range of bilateral agreements such as double taxation avoidance, investment promotion and protection agreement, MOU on cooperation in biotechnology, extradition, Treaty 2003, etc. Indian origin people comprise nearly 70% of the Mauritius population. November 2 is observed as the Apravasi Day. Apravasi Day. In Mauritius on this day, 1834, ship Atlas docked in Mauritius carrying the first batch of Indian indentured laborers. Then National Day of Mauritius celebrated March 12, tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. ठीक है. India and Mauritius are part of various international organizations like WTO, Commonwealth of Nations and UN defense corporations, including the transfer of a Dornier aircraft and advanced light helicopter Mk3 and Dhruv by India. Then IBSA Trilateral Ministerial Commissions क्या है? 10th India Brazil South Africa Dialogue Forum IBSA Trilateral Ministerial Commission held in the September 2022. India Brazil South Africa Dialogue Forum about it's a trilateral grouping of countries from different regions of the world established in 2013 Brazil Declaration. Objective is common position on issues of international importance to promote trade and investment opportunities between the three regions of which they are part, to promote international poverty alleviations and social development. Members are India, Brazil, South Africa. Key initiatives under the IBSA IBSA Fund for Poverty and Hunger Alleviation Developing Countries on demand driven basis. 14 joint working group for corporations in the areas transport, health, education, defense, science and tech, etc. The IBSA Business Forum was launched in 2005 and CII coordinates India's participation. Other key information: India will hosting 6th IBSA Summit on the sidelines of the G20 Summit. Then places in the news, ठीक है, इसमें अफ्रीका में आ जाते हैं. तंजानिया, सेनेगल, सोमालिया, गम्बिया, Zimbabwe, Republic of Congo. It's okay. Then international institutions and organizations, very important. अब आएगा United Nations. About देख लेते हैं कि United Nations is an international organization whose primary role is to maintain world peace and security. Purpose is maintaining international peace and security, protecting the human rights, delivering humanitarian aid, promoting sustainable development, and upholding international law. Members are 193 member states. India is founding member of the UN. United Nations, India has proposed, why in the news? India has proposed the reforms in United Nations, why? Norms, new orientations for reform multilateralism to determine a global order that best reflects contemporary realities. More about the norms envisages reforms in all three pillars of the current multilateral architecture: peace, security, development, human rights, with the UN at its center. It calls for the representative multilateral structure which is needed to address emerging challenges such as terrorism, radicalism, pandemics, threats from the new and emerging technologies and so on. And India proposed the idea while presiding on the UNSC Open Debate on Maintenance of International Peace and Security and UNGA, United Nations General Assembly. Is the main policy making organ of the UN. It's a platform for multilateral discussions on issues of international importance and issues covered by the Charter of UN. All 193 member states of UN covered are in it. So why in the news? Recently UNGA adopted some important resolutions. Key resolutions क्या? Access to clean and healthy environment as a universal human rights. It's not legal binding. It was not included in the Universal Declaration of UN UDHR 1948. India has voted in its favor. So earlier in 2021, the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva passed a resolution recognizing access to a healthy and sustainable environment as a universal right. 50 years ago, United Nations Conference on Environment in Stockholm concluded in 1972 with a resolution placing environmental issues at global forefront. Resolutions on multilingualism that mentions Hindi language for first time. It was sponsored by India. Resolution encourages UN to continue disseminating important communications in official as well as non-official languages, including Hindi. 6 official languages of UN are Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, Spanish. Then resolution for developing an international tax cooperation framework. Then United Nations UNSC 5 countries elected to its urban UNSC. UNSC is it's a United Nations principal crisis management body empowered to impose binding obligations on member states to maintain international peace and security. 5 permanent members with 10 non-permanent members इसमें होते हैं. Elected by UN General Assembly by 2/3 majority. They serve 2 year non-consecutive terms and are not afforded veto power. Council's presidency held by each of members in turn for 1 month following English alphabetical orders of member states' names. Then tools for conflict management, negotiations, arbitrations or other peaceful means. Council can also take more assertive actions such as imposing sanctions or authorizing use of force. Then comes other recent developments at the UNSC. Recently G4 countries have highlighted the need for urgent reforms at the UNSC. The process of UNSC reforms is being presently discussed under the IGN framework of UNGA. intergovernmental negotiations. Except China, all permanent members of UNSC bilaterally expressed support for India's candidature to a permanent seat in the expanded UNSC. Then ECOSOC, United Nations Economic and Social Council. It's a principal body for coordination, policy review, policy dialogue, and recommendations on economic, social, and environmental issues, as well as implementation of internationally agreed developmental goals. The 54 member countries members are elected by General Assembly. India gets elected to the 4 UN Economic and Social Council bodies. More in the news. India was elected to the UN ECOSOC for the term 2022-2024. Last year in the Asia Pacific States category, along with Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, and Oman. 4 bodies of ECOSOC are क्या है? Commission for Social Development, Committee on NGO, Commission on CTSD, Science, Tech and Development, and Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Then UNHRC क्या है? In the news, UNGA adopted a resolution suspending Russia from the UNHRC cover over its war in the Ukraine. UNGA by a 2/3 majority of the members present in voting may suspend the rights of membership in the council of a member of the council. Abstentions do not count, and the resolution requires 2/3 of the yes or no votes to be adopted. Before Russia, Libya was the last member to be suspended in 2011. The UNHRC क्या है? HCR है United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, a global organization dedicated to saving lives, protecting rights, and building a better future for refugee, forcibly displaced communities and stateless people, created in 1950 during the aftermath of the Second World War. What are the human rights? These universal rights are the inherent to us all, regardless of the nationality, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, and other status. They range from the most fundamental right to life to those that make life worth living, such as rights to food, education, work, health, liberty. Then, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the UNGA in 1948, was the first legal document to set out fundamental human rights to be universally protected. Then, UDHR, together with the 2 covenants make up International Bill of Rights. They are International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant for Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Key features of the human rights are non-discriminatory, individual and interdependent, universality and inalienable. Then UNHRC, United Nations Human Rights Council. It's about UNHRC. It's an intergovernmental body within the United Nations system made up of 47 states. It reports directly to the General Assembly. It receives substantive and technical support from UN Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights. It replaced the former Commission on Human Rights, which operated from 1946 to 2006. Mandate is to prevent and combat human rights violations, to make recommendations thereon, to promote and coordinate the mainstreaming of human rights within the UN system, manages the Universal Periodic Review, a process through which each UN member state's overall human rights record is reviewed. The status of India क्या है? India was re-elected to the UNHRC for a 6th term 2022 से 24 तक. Eligibility, all UN members are eligible. Term क्या है? 3 years and are not eligible for immediate re-election. मेंबर्स क्या है? कितने हैं? देख, अफ्रीका से 13, एशियन पैसिफिक से 13, लैटिन अमेरिका कैरिबियन स्टेट्स से 8, वेस्टर्न यूरोपियंस एंड अदर स्टेट्स से 7 एंड ईस्टर्न यूरोपियन स्टेट्स से 6. देन अदर इंपॉर्टेंट न्यूज क्या है रिलेटेड टू यूएन. इंडिया यूएन डेवलपमेंट पार्टनरशिप फंड सेलिब्रेटेड 5 years of साउथ कोऑपरेशन. इंडिया यूएन डेवलपमेंट पार्टनरशिप फंड क्या है? डेडिकेटेड फैसिलिटी एस्टेब्लिश्ड इन 2017 इन पार्टनरशिप विद द यूनाइटेड नेशंस ऑफिस फॉर साउथ कोऑपरेशन. इट्स मैनेज्ड बाय द UNOCC. UNOSSC and implemented in collaboration with the United Nations system, hosted by the UNDP since 1974, was established by UNGA. Then United Nations Commission on Status of Women. UN Economic and Social Council adopted a resolution to remove Iran from CSW. Commission on Status of Women. Then United Nations Commission on Status of Women it's established by ECOSOC in 1946 for promotion of gender equality. It's a principal global intergovernmental body exclusively dedicated to promotion of gender equality and empowerment of women. Objective is to promote women's rights, document the reality of women's live throughout the world, play leading role in the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and platform for action. Membership consists of 1 representative from each of 45 member states elected by ECOSOC on the basis of equitable geographical distribution for a period of 4 years. India was elected to CSW for 4 years from 21 से 25 तक. The Nansen Refugee Award. Angela Merkel, a former Chancellor of Germany, has won 2022 UNHCR Nansen Refugee Award for protecting refugee at Syria crisis. Award established in 1954 honor individuals, groups, organizations who go above and beyond call of duty to protect refugee, internally displaced or stateless people. It is named after Norwegian explorer, scientist, diplomat and humanitarian Fridtjof Nansen. He was first High Commissioner for Refugee for League of Nations and won Nobel Peace Prize in 1982. Group of 20 G20. Yes, very important.
Bharat 2023 India Vasudev Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future. That's the theme. So why in the news? 17th G20 summit concluded recently with the adoption of Bali Declaration. More the news. The motto for this was recover together, recover stronger. Recover together, recover stronger. Then also India took over the presidency of G20 from Indonesia. Key highlights of the Bali Declaration 2022 se kya hai? The group highlighted its differences in the ongoing war in the Ukraine and asked for the Russia's complete withdrawal from the territories of Ukraine. ग्लोबल फूड सिक्योरिटी के ऊपर भी फोकस किया है इन्होंने कि ग्रुप ऑल्सो रीअश्योर्ड इट्स कमिटमेंट टू सिक्योर द ग्लोबल फूड सिक्योरिटी. Group welcomed the Black Sea Grain Initiative brokered by Turkey and the UN. It's an MOU signed between the Russia and the UN Secretariat. So group has welcomed the provision of additional financial resources to assist in financing critical gaps in implementing international health regulation 2005. It also uploaded the establishment of a new financial intermediary fund for pandemic PPR hosted by the World Bank. G20 क्या है? Premier Forum for International Economic Cooperation, founded in 1999 after ASEAN financial crisis, a forum for finance ministers and central bank governors to discuss global economic and financial issues. It's an annual summit held under the leadership of rotating presidency. No permanent secretary is there, and past, present, and incoming presidents troika support presidencies. Then G20 के members बोल दे एक बार. अर्जेंटीना, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, ब्राजील, चाइना, EU, इंडिया, इंडोनेशिया, मेक्सिको, सऊदी अरब, साउथ अफ्रीका, साउथ कोरिया. इट ऑर्डर में जमा ए से दो बनाने वाले. अर्जेंटीना, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, फिर ब्राजील, देन चाइना, EU, इंडिया, इंडोनेशिया, आई मैक्सिको सिंगल, देन सऊदी अरब ऐसे तीन है. सऊदी अरब, साउथ अफ्रीका, साउथ कोरिया, देन USA, UK, UU सिमिलर, देन टर्की सिंगल, जापान, देन FGI मीन्स फ्रांस, जर्मनी, इटली, एंड देन रशिया, कनाडा. दैट्स ऑल. So importance of G20, 80% of global GDP, 75% of international trade, and 60% of global population. Then restructure of the G20 preparatory process क्या है? G20 finance track, Sherpa track, outreach dialogue, non-members, B20, Think 20, Y20, NGOs, India 2023, Indonesia ठीक है, ट्रॉयका ब्राजील में होगा 2024 में. India's G20 priorities क्या है? Very important. Green development, climate finance and life. Green development, climate finance and life. Accelerated inclusive and resilient growth. Accelerating progress on the SDGs. Technological transformation and digital public infrastructure. Multilateral institutions for 21st century and women-led development. Then Sherpa Trek underlined the significance of Global South at first. G20 Sherpa Trek reject meeting under its presidency. Sherpa Trek involves technical and policy analysis by working groups comprising the officials from each member country and other international organizations. It focuses on development of oriented issues such as agriculture, fight corruption, etc. Sherpa is personal representative or leader of member country derived from the Nepali Sherpa people who serves guide for mountaineers. Then G20 finance track, very important. First G20 finance track meeting was held in the Bangalore. Finance track is led by finance ministers and central bank governors of G20 countries. It provides an effective forum for global economic discourse and policy coordination. It focuses on the managing global debt vulnerabilities, advancing the financial inclusion, financing for climate actions and SDG, etc. The track under G20's Sherpa track, which oversees negotiation, discussion agenda and coordinates substantive work. Urban 20 U20 क्या है? MOUA is organizing the U20 event to facilitate discussions on the various important issues of urban development, including climate change, social inclusion, and propose collective solution. It facilitates a reproductive dialogue between the national and the local governments and helps promote the importance of urban development issues in the G20 agenda. G20 Digital Innovation Alliance क्या है? Ministry of MITI has launched G20 Digital Innovation India Alliance, Digital Innovation Alliance DIA. About G20 DIA, its an objective is to identify, recognize and enable adoption of innovative and impactful digital technologies developed by startups from G20 nations as well as invited non-member nations. It seeks digital solutions in the 6 themes: agri-tech, health-tech, edutech, fintech, secure digital infrastructure and circular economy. Quads क्या है? Important. Fourth Quad Leaders Tokyo Summit 2022 concluded. सबसे पहले कोऑर्डिनेटेड सिक्योरिटी डायलॉग देखते हैं. इट्स अबाउट इनफॉर्मल स्ट्रेटेजिक डायलॉग बिटवीन द ऑस्ट्रेलिया, इंडिया, जापान, यूएस. इट वाज फर्स्ट एस्टेब्लिश्ड इन 2007 बट वाज लेटर रिवाइव्ड इन 2017. Objective is to primary objective grouping is to free, open, prosperous and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. It's meant to deepen economic, diplomatic, military ties among the 4 countries. It's not a military alliance. Then China has expressed concern over the Quad, viewing it as an attempt to contain its rise as a global power and exert influence in the region. Then key highlights of the 4th Quad Summit. Quad nations agreed to create an Earth observation-based monitoring and sustainable development framework to combat illegal, unregulated and unprotected fishing. It will include sharing of space-based civil Earth observation data and Quad satellite data portal to aggregate links respective national satellite data resources. To extend over 50 billion US dollar of infrastructure assistance and investments in the Indo-Pacific over the next 5 years, it strengthened the capacities of countries in need to cope with debt issues under the G20 common framework. Also promote debt sustainability and transparency through Quad debt management resource portal. Launch Quad climate change adaptations and mitigation package with mitigations and adaptation as its two themes. Established Quad partnerships on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in the Indo-Pacific to strengthen collaborations and effectively respond to disasters in the region. To initiate the first ever Quad Cybersecurity Day to help individuals across yes to Indo-Pacific region beyond to protect themselves from cyber threats. Then SCO come. The 22nd meeting of the Council of Heads of State of Shanghai Cooperation Organization took place in the Samarkand, Uzbekistan. Samarkand Declaration क्या है? It advocated commitment to the peaceful settlement of the differences and disputes between the countries through dialogue and consultation, to develop common principles and approaches to form unified list of terrorist, separatist and extremist organizations, and to support for the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons and the continuations of the nuclear disarmament. Key highlights of the meeting: Samarkand Declaration was adopted. SCO presidency was handed over to India, and India will host the SCO's 2023 summit. The Varanasi was declared as SCO tourism and cultural capital for 22 to promote rich heritage and the tourism potential of SCO member states. Iran was accepted as a permanent member of the SCO. India's take क्या है इसमें? Food security, traditional medicine. To promote millets, address issues related to food security, traditional medicine में India to take initiatives for the new SCO working groups on traditional medicines. ठीक है, फिर आता है SCO में about a permanent intergovernmental organization founded in Shanghai 2001 में. SCO has been observer in the UNGA since 2005. Major goals of SCOs क्या है? Security related concern, resolving border issues, military cooperation, intelligence sharing, countering terrorism, and countering American influence in Central Asia. मेंबर्स एंड पार्टनर कंट्रीज क्या है? चाइना, कजाकिस्तान, किर्गिस्तान, रशिया, ताजिकिस्तान, उज्बेकिस्तान. बस तुर्क में इसके साथ नहीं है, बस इंडिया, पाक, ईरान. Then its SCO represents 41% global population, global land area 25% and 24% global GDP. वर्किंग स्ट्रक्चर क्या है? ठीक है, हेड्स ऑफ दैट्स नॉट साउथ एशियन. देन सार्क पढ़ लेते हैं. सार्क इज द रिसेंटली about intergovernmental organization that promotes economic, cultural, social cooperation among its member nations with South Asia. Its objective is to promote the welfare of the people of South Asia and to improve their quality of life and to accelerate economic growth, territorial integrity, mutual trust, and strengthen collective self-reliance, etc. But why, yaar? Recently, South Asian University in Delhi and International University established the South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation witnessed month-long student protest. Key facts: established in 1985 in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Headquarters is Kathmandu, Nepal. Population is 24% of world's total population. Area 3.4% of the habitable area. GDP is 4.2% of the global economy. Last SAARC summit is 2014 in Kathmandu. मेंबर क्या है इसके? अफगान, पाकिस्तान, इंडिया, नेपाल, भूटान, बांग्लादेश, श्रीलंका, मालदीव्स. अचीवमेंट्स ऑफ सार्क क्या है? साउथ एशियन फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट, सार्क यूनिवर्सिटीज, सप्ता दैट इज साउथ एशिया प्रेफरेंशियल ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट, सार्क आर्बिट्रेशन काउंसिल, सार्क फूड बैंक, सार्क डेवलपमेंट फंड, सार्क एग्रीमेंट ऑन ट्रेड इन सर्विसेज. देन साउथ एशियन रीजनल स्टैंडर्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन सार्सो क्या है? साउथ एशियन फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट was signed to reduce customs duties of all traded goods to zero by year 2016. It's confined to goods only. Then SAARC University is established in India. Then South Asia preferential trading agreement for promoting trade amongst the member countries came into effect in 1995. SAARC Arbitration Council at Islamabad to provide a legal forum for the South Asian nations for solving conflicts. Then SAARC Food Bank was established to facilitate as an emergency source for facing a crisis and shortage or a natural disaster, floods, earthquakes, such other issues. And SAARC Development Fund also to promote the welfare of the people of the South Asian regions. And SAARC Agreement on Trade and Services, SATIS. SATIS is following the GATS Plus positive list approach for trade and service liberalization. And SARSO is the South Asia Regional Standard Organization in Dhaka to develop harmonized standards for the region to facilitate inter-regional trade and enhance access to the global market. Related news क्या है? Currency swap agreements. RBI has signed a currency swap agreement with Maldives Monetary Authority under the SAARC currency swap framework. CSA between the two countries is an agreement or contract to exchange currencies with the predetermined terms and conditions. SAARC currency swap facilities came into operation in 2012. Funding for short-term foreign exchange liquidity requirements or balance of payment crisis till longer-term arrangements are made. This withdrawal can be made in US dollar, euro or Indian rupees. Then BIMSTEC क्या है? Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multisectoral Technical and Economic Cooperations. Experts have suggested that there is a need to look for better regional forums like BIMSTEC for the South Asian regions. Then BIMSTEC is Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multisectoral Technical and Economic Cooperations. क्या है? नेपाल, भूटान,
बांग्लादेश, इंडिया, थाईलैंड, म्यांमार एंड श्रीलंका में नेपाल, अच्छा सब बॉर्डरिंग कंट्रीज है, मतलब अफगानिस्तान पाकिस्तान को छोड़कर सब है इसमें। इंडिया, नेपाल, भूटान, बांग्लादेश, थाईलैंड, एक्स्ट्रा है म्यांमार एंड श्रीलंका। देन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ऑफ बिम्स्टेक क्या? टू इनेबल द एनवायरमेंट for rapid economic development, to collaborate and mutually assist members on matters of common interest, to maintain close and beneficial cooperation with the existing international and regional organization, to endeavor to eradicate poverty from the Bay of Bengal region, and to establish multidimensional connectivity, promote synergy among the connectivity frameworks in the region. Then BIMSTEC के principles क्या? Respect for sovereign equality, respect for territorial integrity, respect for political independence, non-interference in internal affairs, non-aggression, peaceful coexistence. BIMSTEC working structure, the summit मिनिस्ट्रल मीटिंग वर्किंग स्ट्रक्चर तो कौन ठीक है, इंपॉर्टेंस पढ़ ले और सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ बिम्स्टेक। इंपॉर्टेंस इज अकाउंट फॉर 22% ऑफ वर्ल्ड पॉपुलेशन, कंबाइंड जीडीपी ऑफ $3.7 trillion, 1/4 ऑफ द वर्ल्ड्स ट्रेडेड गुड अक्रॉस द बे एवरी ईयर। 6 फोकस एरियाज आर ट्रेड, टेक्नोलॉजी, एनर्जी, ट्रांसपोर्ट, टूरिज्म, फिशरीज। एंड सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ बिम्स्टेक फॉर इंडिया क्या है? कनेक्टिंग लिंक फॉर नेबरहुड फर्स्ट पॉलिसी एंड द एक्ट ईस्ट पॉलिसी फॉर डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द नॉर्थ ईस्ट रीजन, बूस्टर टू ब्लू इकोनॉमिक गोल्स एंड काउंटरिंग द चाइनीज इन्फ्लुएंस। देन NATO पढ़ते हैं। NATO summit was held recently in the Madrid, Spain amid Russia-Ukraine war. Some of the key outcomes क्या हैं? NATO approved the new strategic concept which describes how NATO will address threats and challenges in the new security environments in the coming years. The document defines Russia as the most significant and direct threat to the NATO's security. For the first time, NATO recognized China's threat to alliance security's interests and values. NATO membership innovations for Finland and Sweden after Turkey lifted its veto on their membership. Launch of the NATO Innovation Fund, which will invest $1 billion over the next 15 years in startups developing dual use emerging technologies such as AI. Then NATO comes. NATO members आते हैं। ठीक है। About NATO is a trans-Atlantic political and military alliance. Objective is to provide mutual defense through military and political means if a member state threatened by an external country, to promote democratic values and support international security and enhance cooperation. Origin is by created with signing of a North Atlantic Treaty, popularly known as the Washington Treaty, with 12 founding members. Currently, it has 30 members, with North Macedonia as the last member to join it in 2020. Key features: it derives its authority from Article 51 of the UN Charter. NATO Treaty establishes a system of collective defense. NATO's open door policy allows European countries that enhance contribute to the security of the North Atlantic area to join it. Then major non-NATO allies status क्या है? Designation given by the US government to close allies that have strategic working relationship with the US armed forces but are not members of NATO. US has designated 30 other countries including Japan, South Korea, Japan, Israel, etc. as a major non-NATO allies. India is not a major non-NATO ally. Yes. BRICS in the news recently, 14 BRICS summit. Yes. Highlight summit क्या है? Theme of summit was foster high quality BRICS partnership and usher in the new era of the global development. BRICS leaders adopted the Beijing Declaration. India proposed initiatives. India called for the strengthening of BRICS identity and proposed establishment of the online database for BRICS documents, the BRICS Railway Research Network, and strengthening cooperation between the MSMEs. India will organizing the BRICS startup event this year to strengthen connection between startups in the BRICS countries. The denial of safe haven to corruption. BRICS welcomed the BRICS initiatives on denial of safe haven to the corruption, which further strengthen the anti-corruption capacity building. BRICS क्या हैं? Members Brazil, Russia, India, ठीक है, China. Objectives to promote peace, security, development and cooperation in the world, making a positive impact on the development of humanity and establishing a more equitable and fairer world. 5 emerging economies of BRICS, ठीक है, population, रशिया लैंड एरिया में, इंडिया जीडीपी में, चाइना एक्सपोर्ट इंपोर्ट में, ब्राजील पॉपुलेशन में, ठीक है। इंडिया कंट्रीब्यूशन इन ब्रिक्स क्या? प्रपोजल ऑफ न्यू डेवलपमेंट बैंक in 2012 में एडेड द अर्बनाइजेशन फोरम टू ब्रिक्स कॉपरेशन मैकेनिज्म टू लर्न फ्रॉम ईच अदर्स एक्सपीरियंस इन द टैकलिंग challenges of the rapid urbanization. Institutionalize the practice of holding BRICS academic forum meetings is preparatory meetings for the annual summits. BRICS achievements क्या हैं? Establishment of the new development bank and contingent reserve arrangements. NDB headquartered in Shanghai has been established with the purpose of mobilizing resources for infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS and other emerging developing countries. CRA intends to provide liquidity through currency swaps in response to actual or potential short-term balance of payment crisis. IMF reforms क्या हैं? Joint efforts of BRICS culminated in the 2010 reform proposals on quota and governance. Subsequently, the quota of the IMF was doubled with a total 6% share transferred to the emerging and developing countries. The votes of China, Russia, Brazil, India was increased and reached a total of 14.81%. Then new development bank. NDB has announced the launch of its Indian regional office in Gujarat International Gift City. Yes, Gujarat International Fintech. Then importance of multilateral development institutions for developing countries like India क्या है? Helps investors and business leaders in expansion through new fast growing markets. Helps to overcome the disadvantages suffered due to low credit ratings. Support in coordinating response to regional global challenges and major source of financial and technical assistance. Then more about BRICS. NDB क्या है? NDB is a multilateral development institutions established by the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, ठीक है. During the 6th BRICS summit in Fort Laza 2014, bank's membership is open to members of the UN. NDB has admitted 4 new members in 2021 में क्या है? Bangladesh, Egypt, UAE and Uruguay. Purpose is with an authorized capital of $100 billion. NDB supports private and public infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS nation and other emerging and developing economies. Then governance structures, it functions through a board of governors, board of directors, a president and vice presidents, with the president being elected from one of founding members on a rotational basis. Then major global and regional MDIs with Indian memberships. ठीक है, the World Bank, New Development Bank, co-financing arrangements. Then Association of Southeast Asian Nation, ASEAN क्या है? Why in the news? India co-chaired special meeting of ASEAN foreign ministers, Delhi dialogue virtually with Singapore. Highlights of the meeting क्या है? The year 2022 was announced as India-ASEAN Friendship Year on account of 30th anniversary of India-ASEAN partnership. Focus of the meeting was to review progress of cooperation under the all 3 pillars of partnership: economic and socio-cultural, political security, and also on taking step for further implementation of ASEAN-India Plan of Action. Then as ASEAN क्या है about? It's a regional intergovernmental organization. Objective is to promote regional cooperation and stability, economic growth and development, and cultural exchange among the member countries. Key facts: population is 8.5% of the world, GDP is 3.5% of the world. Members क्या हैं इसके? वही म्यांमार, वियतनाम, लाओस, फिलीपींस, ब्रुनेई, कंबोडिया, सिंगापुर, थाईलैंड, मलेशिया, इंडोनेशिया. Then regional cooperation mechanisms: ASEAN plus 3 APT. Members: 10 ASEAN member states in China, Japan and the Republic of Korea. ROK वो था. Objectives क्या है? The forum aims to deepen economic integration by promoting regional trade and investment, developing regional infrastructure and strengthening financial cooperation. Then East Asian Summit में आता है 10 ASEAN member states: Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, Russia Federation and USA. Objectives is to further the objectives of regional peace, security and prosperity. Major contributions by India in the past क्या है? India partnered with Australia on maritime security cooperation. India, in partnership with Australia and Singapore, also organized the EAS workshops on combating marine pollution. India also announced Indo-Pacific Ocean initiatives at the 14th EAS. Then Group of 7 क्या है? Why in the news? Indian PM participated in G7 summit recently in Germany. Highlights of the summit क्या है? G7 leader launched partnership for the global infrastructure and investment scheme to mobilize $600 billion by 2027 to deliver transparent and game-changing infrastructure projects in developing and middle-income countries in a move. PGI is being considered as a rebranding of a Build Back Better World initiatives and is seen as a counter to China CBRI. So G7 agreed on establishing Climate Club to support the effective implementation of a Paris Agreement. G7 about क्या है? It's an informal forum of the leading industrialized nations which dominate global trade and international financial system. Purpose is to meet annually to discuss issues such as global economic governance, international security and energy policy, besides host of other issues topical to prevailing situations. In G7 कौन आता है? कनाडा, फ्रांस, जर्मनी, यूके, यूएस, इटली, FGI, रशिया, यूएस, यूके, जापान एंड कनाडा. ये G7 में आते हैं. अगर रशिया को इंक्लूड कर दो G8 एंड G20 के लिए तो मैंने ऑलरेडी आई हैड स्पोकन. सो रशिया ज्वाइंट G7 in 19. ठीक है. अचीवमेंट्स ऑफ G7 क्या है? EU is not a member of G7. Achievements of G7 played a crucial role in setting up a global fund to fight malaria and AIDS in 2002. G7 finance ministers agreed to back a global minimum tax of at least 15% on multinational companies. In 2015, members launched the global Apollo program to tackle climate change through clean energy research and development. G7 by numbers क्या है? 25% of global carbon dioxide emissions in the infographic. 46% of global GDP is represented by the countries that make up G7 and 1/10 of the world's population lives in G7 countries. Related news क्या है? India and with the G7 countries and 4 invited countries, Argentina, Indonesia, Senegal, South Africa, signed 2022 Resilient Democracy Statements. Countries affirm their commitment to work towards equitable inclusion and sustainable solutions to global challenges and reaffirm to the rules-based international order. Principles of RDS: global responsibility, information, environment, civil society and inclusion and equality, non-aligned movement,
Recently, non-aligned movement has completed 60 years. About non-aligned movement was created and founded during the independence struggles of Africa, Asia and Latin America, and at the height of Cold War. Idea was to declare themselves as non-aligned from either of the two nascent military blocs, NATO and Warsaw Pact. A key role was played by this process by the heads of the state of Egypt, Ghana, India, Indonesia, and Yugoslavia, who later became the founding fathers of the movement. Origin is Asia Africa Conference held in the Bandung, Indonesia in 1955. 10 principles of Bandung proclaimed during the Bandung Asian African Conference were adopted later as the main goals of NAM. NAM's first performance is Belgrade Conference held in the 1961 under the leadership of India, Yugoslavia, Egypt, Ghana, Indonesia. Policy of NAM was based on the 5 principles of Panchashil. After the end of the Cold War, movement seemed to have lost its relevance during the Havana Summit. Member countries reaffirmed their commitment to the ideals, principles, and purposes upon which movement was founded with the United Nations Charter. It has 120 members comprising the 53 countries from Africa, 39 from Asia, 26 from Latin America and the Caribbean, and 2 from Europe, Belarus, Azerbaijan. Then SADC, Southern African Development Community. Recently, the CII, Exim Bank Regional Conclave, Indian South African Growth Partnership was held. The conclave serves as a platform for dialogues between the India's Southern African Development Community. Southern African Development Community about kya hai nature is intergovernmental organizations. Members are 16 African countries. Origin is circa 1980. Goals of SADC is to further socio-economic cooperation and integration as well as a political and security cooperation among members. SADC constitutes 35% of Africa's land area, 29% of Africa's population, and 28% of Africa's GDP. India SADC economic relations. India signed the MOU on economic cooperation with SADC in 1997. India's total trade with SADC countries is $30.8 billion in 2021. Key imports are fuels, precious stone, metals, mineral fuels, oils. Key exports mineral fuels and pharmaceutical products. India's trade deficit with SADC was recorded at $5.4 billion in 2021. South Africa accounted for around 48% of the India's total exports to the region in 2021. Then multilateral organizations or platform conventions in the news of which India is a member or participating signatory. International Electrotechnical Commission. India recently won International Electrotechnical Commission Vice Presidency and Strategic Management Board Chair for the International Electrotechnical Commission तो क्या आएगा IFC International Finance Corporation. Yes, it's a member of the World Bank Group. It's the largest global development institution focused on the private sector in emerging markets. Its objective is to promote sustainable private sector investments in the developing countries. It supports the World Bank and its twin goals of ending extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity. Membership is IFC has 186 member countries, including most of world's developing countries. India is a founder member. So other arms of IFC is IDA, IBRD, MEGA, ICSID, and India is a member of all except ICSIDS. ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank. ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank is a multilateral development bank, has authorized capital of $100 billion. Objective is to improve socio-economic outcomes in Asia. Members are 103 approved members representing approximately 80% of the global population and 65% of the global GDP. India and AIIB is the founding member and second largest shareholders in the AIIB with 7.6% voting shares, while China holds 27% voting shares, being the largest. AIIB has approved more loans for India than any other members. Then International Court of Justice ICJ क्या है? Ukraine had filed an application against Russia before the International Court of Justice. Ukraine filed an application against Russia under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. About Genocide Convention. Genocide Convention is the first human rights treaty adopted by UNG in 1948. According to Genocide Convention, genocide is a crime that can take place both in time of war as well as in time of peace. Then its adoption marked a crucial step towards the development of international human rights and international criminal law. Convention establishes state parties to obligation to take measures to prevent and punish crime of genocide. Then International Court of Justice क्या ICJ हैग में इसका हेडक्वार्टर 1945 में ये एस्टेब्लिश हुआ था. The International Court of Justice, it's not criminal का नहीं है ये. International Court of Justice ICJ is the principal judicial organ of the United Nations. Then objective is to settle legal disputes between the states and to provide advisory opinions on legal questions referred to it by the authorized UN organs and specialized agencies. The court's decisions are binding and final for the parties involved in dispute. Composition is ICJ consists of 15 judges.
Tenure is 9 years. Re-elected, but no two judges may be nationals of the same country. Indian judges at ICGA. Asia Pacific Institute of Broadcasting Development. Asia Pacific Institute of Broadcasting Development is a regional intergovernmental organization of UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific in the field of electronic media development. Objective is AIBD. Asia Pacific Broadcasting Development is mandated to achieve a vibrant and cohesive electronic media environment in the Asia Pacific region through policy and resource development. India is a member, yes. It currently has 26 countries as full members, represented by 43 organizations. ठीक है. G33 Friends of Special Products. G33 or Friends of Special Products in Agriculture is a coalition of developing countries pressing for flexibility for developing countries to undertake limited marketing opening in the agriculture. Under this, both members India and Pakistan are working closely at WTO. Despite fractious bilateral relations, it has proposed special rules for developing countries at WTO negotiations on issues affecting food security and livelihood of farmers, like allowing them to continue to restrict access to their agricultural markets. Then Codex Committee on the Spices and Culinary Herbs. ये तो नहीं आएगा, छोड़ना. Then OPEC plus, yes, OPEC plus. Agreed deep cuts to oil production curbing supply cut, which could increase oil prices. Alliance of oil producing countries to coordinate and stabilize global oil prices. Yes, इसके objectives हैं. Member countries क्या है? Saudi Arab, UAE, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Algeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Libya, Nigeria, Republic of Congo, Venezuela, and OPEC was founded in 1960. So 10 other oil producing countries: Russia, Azerbaijan, ठीक है, Bahrain, Brunei, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Mexico, Oman, South Sudan, and Sudan. So and India is not a member. Then Caribbean Community, okay, ये तो कहाँ है? And then League of Arab States, yes. League of Arab States का India is not a member. So intergovernmental organizations, African and Middle East countries whose peoples are mainly Arabic speaking to strengthen ties, okay. 22 member states. And then issues related to security आता है, yes. These weapons of mass destruction. Recently, the weapons of mass destruction and their delivery system, prohibition of unlawful activities, Amendment Act 2022 to ban funding of weapons of mass destruction was enacted. Key provisions that amends the weapon of mass destruction and the delivery system, prohibition of unlawful activities Act 2005. The 2005 Act prohibits unlawful activities such as manufacturing, transport, or transfer related to the weapons of mass destruction and their means of delivery. The recent amendment extends the scope of banned activities to include financing of already prohibited activities. It bars person from financing any prohibited activity related to WMD and the delivery system directly or indirectly. It empowers the central government to freeze, seize, or attach financial assets and economic resources of the people engaged in activities. About weapons of mass destruction, there is no single authoritative definition of weapons of mass destruction in international law, and the expression is usually understood to cover nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. According to the US Department of Homeland Security, a weapon of mass destruction is a nuclear, radiological, chemical, biological, or the device that is intended to harm a large number of people. Definitions of क्या है इसका? Definitions नहीं, weapons of mass destruction and their delivery system, prohibition of unlawful activities Act 2005 था to provide an integrated and overarching legislation of prohibiting unlawful activities in relation to all three types of WMD: nuclear, chemical, and biological. इसकी penalties for conventions था enforced by the UNSC are in 5040 resolution, ठीक है. Then global efforts to outlaw several classes of WMDs, okay, prohibits the development, supplements Geneva Protocol. That's too long. So what to do now? Treaties or conventions. Then Biological and Toxic Weapons Convention 1972, Geneva Protocol. It supplements the Geneva Protocol. Then Chemical Weapons and Convention 1992 prohibits the development, production, acquisition, stockpiling, retention, transfer, or use of chemical weapons. Yes. Has India ratified, signed, and it? Yes. In Treaty on the Non-Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons 1977, no, India has not signed. Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, no. Hague Code of Conduct, yes, I have to read it. So global efforts to outlaw several classes of WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. Like first, yes, I have to read it in detail, so I have to properly conduct. First, Biological and Toxic Weapons Convention, WMCA 1972, purpose to prohibits development, production, acquisition, transfer, stockpiling, and use of biological and toxic weapons. It supplements the 1925 Geneva Protocol, which had prohibited the only use of biological weapons. Has India signed and ratified it? Yes. Then Chemical Weapons Convention 1992 prohibits the development, production, acquisition, stockpiling, retention, transfer, or use of chemical weapons. Has India ratified? Yes. So it led to the establishment of Organization of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, headquartered to the Hague. Then Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of the Nuclear Weapons, NPT 1977,
to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology, to promote cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and to further goal of achieving nuclear disarmament. No. India opposes NPT's discriminatory nature and argues for the universal ban of nuclear weapons. Then Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons 2017 prohibits participating in any nuclear weapon activities. These include in undertakings not to develop, test, produce, acquire, possess, stockpile, use or threaten to use nuclear weapons, and also to provide assistance to any state in the conduct of prohibited activities. No, India believes that these treaty does not constitute or contribute to the development of the customary international law, nor does it set any new standards or norms. Then Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty 1996. It bans all nuclear explosion tests on Earth. It also establishes a CTBT organization, CTBTO, located in Vienna to ensure the implementation of its provision. It's yet to enter into force. No, India opposes CTBT's discriminatory nature and supports universal ban of nuclear weapons. Then Hague Code of Conduct, formerly known as the International Code of Conduct 2002. It's proposed to regulate access to ballistic missiles which can potentially deliver the weapon of mass destruction. Yes, India has ratified it. And then multilateral export control regimes. इसमें आता है voluntary and non-binding agreements created by the major supplier countries to cooperate in their effort to prevent transfer of certain military and dual-use technology that support proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. There are currently 4 such regimes under MECR. क्या है? NSG, ऑस्ट्रेलिया ग्रुप, मिसाइल टेक्नोलॉजी कंट्रोल रिजाइम एंड वेसनार अरेंजमेंट्स, ये याद करने पड़ेंगे. ये न्यूक्लियर सप्लायर ग्रुप फॉर द कंट्रोल ऑफ न्यूक्लियर रिलेटेड टेक्नोलॉजी, ऑस्ट्रेलिया ग्रुप फॉर कंट्रोल ऑफ केमिकल एंड बायोलॉजिकल टेक्नोलॉजिकल दैट कुड बी वेपनाइज्ड, ऑस्ट्रेलिया ग्रुप फॉर कंट्रोल ऑफ केमिकल एंड बायोलॉजिकल टेक्नोलॉजी दैट कुड बी वेपनाइज्ड, एंड मिसाइल टेक्नोलॉजी कंट्रोल रिजाइम फॉर द कंट्रोल ऑफ rockets and other aerial vehicles capable of delivering weapons of mass destruction, and Wassenaar arrangement for conventional arms and dual use goods and technologies. India is a member of 3 of the 4 MECR except the nuclear supplier group. Related news क्या है इसकी? World's stockpile of nuclear weapon increasing, report by the nuclear weapons ban monitoring. Nuclear weapon ban monitoring established as a research program in 2018, produced and published by the Norwegian People's Age. ठीक है, तो छोड़ो. Non-nuclear NPT, yes. Recently NPT's 5-year review meeting took place. NPT completed 50 साल in 2020. क्या है about? It's an international agreement aimed at preventing the spread of nuclear weapons and promoting disarmament. Established in 1968, objective is to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technologies, to promote cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, to further the goal of achieving nuclear disarmament and general and complete disarmament. Then members is all countries of the world except South Sudan, India, Pakistan, Israel, North Korea. India is not a signatory. Yes, all countries of the world except South Sudan, India, Pakistan, Israel, North Korea. Then nuclear weapon states those who have built and tested a nuclear explosive device before January 1, 1967. These are the US, Russia, UK, France and China. मतलब वही उसकी UNSC के countries. Then NPT review conference is held every 5 years. Okay, Zangar committee was formed following the committee coming into the force of NPT. So it maintains a trigger list of nuclear related strategic goods. The International Atomic Energy Agency verifies non-NWS compliance with commitments under the NPT not to acquire nuclear weapons. India stand on NPT. India has not signed NPT, not joined NPT. India supports commencement of the negotiations on a comprehensive nuclear weapons convention in the Conference on Disarmament, which is the world's single multilateral disarmament negotiation forum working on the basis of consensus. India supports proposed fissile material cutoff treaty under that it would prohibit the production of 2 main components of nuclear weapons, highly enriched uranium and plutonium. Then treaties and initiatives establishing nuclear weapon free zones in Asia and Pacific. Treaty of Rarotonga, Bangkok Treaty, Central Asia nuclear weapons free zone. Then Mongolia declared itself the first single state nuclear weapons free zone in 1992. Then Interpol आता है. Why in the news? 90th Interpol General Assembly meeting was held in New Delhi. Interpol has launched the first ever police metaverse specifically designed for the law enforcement agencies worldwide during its 90th General Assembly in New Delhi. International Criminal Police Organization. Yes, Interpol is an intergovernmental organization which helps in the police and all members of countries to work together to make the world a safer place. It strengthens ties among the member states, coordinate their policies and promote their common interests. It has over 95 countries. Organized national structures is General Assembly, Executive Committee, General Secretariat and Interpol National Security Bureau. ठीक है. Then Financial Action FATF. Yes, about it, it's an intergovernmental body established by a group of 7, G7. Objective is to protect global financial system against money laundering, terrorist financing and financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Members क्या 37 member jurisdictions and 2 regional organizations, GCC and European Commission. Grey list versus black list क्या है? Why countries come under these list? Why? What are the implications of being these list? Grey list or jurisdiction under increased monitoring. They have strategic deficiencies in their regimes to counter MLTFP. Then countries have to formally commit to develop action plans to address strategic deficiencies in their regimes. Blacklisted, ठीक है, इसमें आता है blacklist में. Then functions set international standards, maintains black grey list of the countries. Countries are removed from grey list based on their progress on the effectiveness of its AML or CFT regime. Then mission dev space. Mission dev space was launched at the annual defense expo held in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. About mission dev space, क्या है? Mission dev space has been to develop innovative solutions for the armed forces in the space domain through industry and startups in the at Def Expo 2022. Also, the fourth positive indigenization list of 101 items under the Defense Acquisition Procedure DAP 2022 boost self-reliance was announced. Militarization of the space and mission dev space through a number of treaties exist for space and its peaceful uses. A number of challenges or threats exist to space assets. US Space Force and China PLA Strategic Support Force also pursuing dedicated military space institutions. Then treaties for space क्या है? 1963 Partial Testament Treaty, 1967 Outer Space Treaty, 1968 Rescue Agreement. Mission Dev Space. Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020. Defense will ensure timely acquisition of military equipment, systems and platforms as required by the armed forces in terms of performance, capabilities, quality standards through optimum utilization of allocated budgetary resources. Then comes other important news. Macaulay Conventions. Yes. Squad or tactics. नहीं, Macaulay Conventions क्या है? Interpol's matching fixing task force call for harmonized global efforts to curb competitive manipulation and establishment of national platforms is outlined by the Macaulay Convention. It was the first major event under the newly created Financial Crime and Anti-Corruption Center from Interpol. From India, CBI participated in it. Then dirty bomb. Russia has claimed that Ukraine is planning to use a dirty bomb. Dirty bomb is a bomb that contains radioactive material such as uranium, which is scattered through the air where its conventional explosive detonates. It does not need to contain highly refined radioactive material as it is used in a nuclear bomb. Instead, it uses radioactive material from hospitals, nuclear power stations, or research laboratories. It's makes much cheaper and quicker to make. War crimes. Then UNSC Counter-Terrorism Committee. Yes, like international criminal ये भी कर लेगी यार. War crimes क्या हैं कि according to the Rome Statute of International According to the Rome Statute of International Criminal Court, war crimes refers to the serious violations of humanitarian laws during a domestic conflict or a war between the two states. Genocide and crimes against humanity can happen in the peacetime. The definition is derived from the 1949 Geneva Conventions. It is based on the idea that individuals can be held liable for the actions of a state or its military. International Criminal Court क्या है? It's an independent international organization governed by international treaty called the Rome Statute. World's first permanent ICC proposes court of last resort for the prosecution of serious international crimes, including the genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. India is not a member. Then UNSC Counter-Terrorism Committee. क्या है UNSC? Counter-Terrorism Committee's special meeting is held in India, ended with the adoption of Delhi Declaration, which called for the issuing new set of non-binding guiding principles in countering digital terrorism threat. It counters terrorist exploitation of informatics and communication technologies, countering use of technologies for terrorist purposes, respecting human rights and fundamental freedoms, and deepen the engagement with the civil society, including the organization and private sector entities. And UNSC Counter-Terrorism Committee क्या है? Established by the UNSC Resolution 1373. Okay, UNSC Resolution ठीक है. It steps to enhance our country's legal and institutional counter-terrorism abilities at every level, locally and internationally. These steps include criminalize the financing of terrorism, suppress the provision of safe haven, deny all forms of financial support for terrorist groups, etc. It comprises all current 15 UNSC members. India is not a member. Then TVS-2M, nuclear fuel. Okay, Open Skies Treaties. क्या है Open Skies Treaties? Is Russia pulled out of the Open Skies Treaty, deciding earlier withdrawal of the USA from the treaty. About Open Skies Treaty is an agreement that permits each state party to conduct short notice, unarmed reconnaissance flights over the other's terrorists to collect data on military forces and activities. OST was signed in 1992 and came into effect in 2002. Currently, 32 states are party to the treaty. India and China are not members to the treaty. Open Skies Consultative Commission, comprised of representatives of all states parties, it is responsible for implementation of OST. Data flow, integrated battle groups. Yes, about integrated battle groups. Indian Army. NetGrid, yes, National Intelligence Grid. Government recently inaugurated the NetGrid campus in Bangalore. NetGrid is an attached office of Ministry of Home Affairs. It's an integrated intelligence grid which connects databases of core security agencies. It is proposed after the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. Then it will assist intelligence and law enforcement agencies in ensuring the national and internet security with the ultimate aim to counter terror. NetGrid will link 10 user agencies with certain databases that would be procured from 21 organizations. Database involves data related to credit and debit cards, tax, telecoms, immigration, airlines and railway tickets, passports and driving licenses. NetGrid also has access to crime and criminal tracking networking system. Then Indian Antarctic Act 2022. Then Indian Antarctic Act 2022. Recently, Indian Antarctic Act 2022 was enacted. About Indian, क्या है? This act aims to provide national measures for protecting the Antarctic environment and independent and associated ecosystems, and to give effect to the Antarctic Treaty, the Convention on Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, and to promote protocol on environmental protection to the Antarctic Treaty. Key objectives क्या हैं इसके? Prohibit Indian expedition to Antarctica on carrying of certain activities. Prohibit Indian expeditions to Antarctica or carrying of certain activities in Antarctica without permit. Eliminating mining or illegal activities. Fulfilling India's obligations under Antarctic Treaty and related conventions. Facilitating India's interest and proactive involvement in the management of growing Antarctica tourism and sustainable development of fisheries resources in Antarctic waters. Increasing international visibility, credibility of India in polar governance, and building a well-established legal mechanism for efficient and effective operations of Indian Antarctic programs. Then key provisions of the Act क्या है? Applicability in any foreign citizens, permit systems and all, removal of, ठीक है. The India's endeavors in क्या है? Endeavors in Antarctica. The Protocol on Environment Protection to the Antarctic Treaty entered into force for India in 1998. India is also a member of Council of Managers National Antarctic Program, COMNEP, Council of Managers of National Antarctic Program, Scientific Committee of Antarctic Research, and Commission for Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. Then India's research stations Maitri at Shirmachar Hills, Bharti at Larsaman Hills. Dakshin Gangotri was the first Indian base established in 1984. The Antarctic operations of India are currently funded from the budget allocated to the Ministry of Earth Science and another relevant head. Then Antarctic Treaty, क्या Antarctica Treaty? Key provisions of the Act. Applicability. Provisions applicable to any Indian or foreign citizens, entities incorporated, established or registered under any law in force in India, vessel or aircraft registered in India or involved in any Indian expedition to Antarctica. Establishment of Committee on Antarctic Governance and Environmental Protection to be chaired by the Secretary of Ministry of Earth Sciences. Various functions of the committee include the grant, suspension or cancellation of permits for various activities, monitoring, implementing and ensuring compliance of relevant international laws, emission standards, rules for protection of Antarctic environment, negotiating fees or charges with other parties for activities in Antarctica, and establishment of waste classification systems and waste management plans, etc. Then permit system is only permit by a committee or written authorization from another party to the protocol will be required for waste activities such as entering or staying in Antarctica, mineral resource activities, introduction of non-native animals and plants, or microscopic organizations or microscopic organisms, removal of biological specimen entering into the Antarctic, specially or protected area or marine protected areas, and waste disposal, etc. Then constitutions of Antarctic Fund for Antarctic research work in protection of Antarctic environment. Then stringent penalties for contraventions of the provisions. Example, conducting a nuclear explosion in Antarctica could lead to the imprisonment of 20 years. Then designated court to try punishable offences. Grant of special permit for commercial fishing in Antarctica. Antarctica Treaty क्या है ये पढ़ ले. About Antarctica Treaty, this treaty came into force in 1961 after the ratification by 12 original members: Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, USSR, UK and US. Objective to demilitarize Antarctica, establish it as a zone for peaceful research activities, and set aside disputes over territorial sovereignty. About Antarctica, it's the world's 5th largest, southernmost and the driest, windiest, coldest and iciest continent. So not the country. It has no any government and no indigenous population. It's just 2% of the continent is free of ice, allowing a small toehold of hard animals and plants. Just 2% of this continent is free of ice, allowing a small toehold for hardy animals and plants. It holds 90% of the Earth's total ice volume and 70% of its fresh water. Parties is currently 54 countries have acceded it. Antarctica Treaty System, Convention for the Conservation of Antarctica Seas 1972, Convention of Conservation of Antarctica Marine Living Resources 1980, and Protocol on Environment Protection to the Antarctica Treaty 1991. It second and third is ratified and signed by India in 1985 and 1998. Then Supply Chain Resilience Initiative (SCRI) 3. Supply Chain Resiliency Activity Initiatives. Supply Chain Resilience Initiatives. Yeah. So India recently adopted US Joint Statement of 2022 Supply Chain Ministerial Forum on Cooperation of Global Supply Chains. It's a partnership of 18 economies, including the India, US, European Union, has unveiled the 4-point roadmap for building collective long-term resilient supply chains to counter risk arising from supply dependencies and vulnerabilities. The roadmap was formulated in the backdrop of supply chain summit that was held in the US in 2021. India, Japan, Australia also launched the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, first proposed by Japan to counter China's dominance of the supply chain in the Indo-Pacific region. Then global supply chain का मतलब क्या होता है बताओ? It's a network. They are the network that can span across multiple continents and countries. It involves the flow of information, process and resources across the globes. So about SCRIs, it's an approach that helps a country to ensure it's diversified, its supply risk across a clutch of supplying nations instead of being dependent on just one or few. Our objective is to attract foreign direct FDI to turn the Indo-Pacific into economic powerhouse and build a mutually complementary relationship among our partner countries. Then other important news, Paris Club. Larking Mekong Cooperation क्या है? First national ministerial meeting of since military takeover, formed in 2016 to help ease tensions over the development projects. Larking is Chinese name of Mekong River, Mekong का Lanking Mekong. Then group of friends, काफला system, football में ये तो World Cup organizes Qatar are condemned for its treatment of migrant workers. Kafla system of sponsored ship systems, Caspian Summit, Black Sea grain deal brokered by the UN and Turkey, Russia, Ukraine to tackle escalating food prices. ठीक है, international. Then Lusophone World क्या है? Lusophone Festival, yes, in Goa. India hosted the International Lusophone Festival in Goa. It seeks to further India's connection with the Lusophone world. The Portuguese rule over Vela Goa started in 1510, lasted till 1961. Lusophone world, Portuguese-speaking countries spread in the 9 countries across the 4 continents. Portuguese is the most spoken language in the southern hemisphere. Then 1996, Community of Portuguese Language Countries, also known as the Lusophone Commonwealth, are formed. Okay, India's Lusophone relations क्या है? 2014 में Goa organized the third Lusophonia Games involving athletes from the Lusophone world. 6-fold rise in India's trade with CPLP countries in last decade has witnessed. So India offers training to all. Yes, India Africa Forum Summit, India Technical Economic Cooperation. You can add it. Global Partnership on AI. Yes, India to take over the chair of global partnerships on AI from France. GPAI is an international and multi-stakeholder initiative to guide the responsible development and use of AI consistent with human rights, fundamental freedoms, and shared democratic values. The alliance will look to bridge the gap between the theory and practice by supporting advanced research and applied activities on AI-related priorities. At present, GPAI is at 25 member states. India joined the group as a founding member in 2020. Its secretariat is also hosted at the OECD. Then Financial and Intermediary Fund. Then two Africa peers. Arctic region, our Arctic Council yes, it's important. It's a leading intergovernmental forum promoting cooperation and coordination interactions among the Arctic states, Arctic indigenous peoples and other Arctic inhabitants on common Arctic issues. Origin is established through the Ottawa Declaration by 8 Arctic states. Members are US, Russia, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway and Sweden, and India is the observer. It's headquartered in the Norway Arctic Council, yes. Why it is in the news? Because to strengthen Russia's status as a great Arctic power, Russia launched the 2 nuclear-powered icebreakers that is at St. Petersburg. Nuclear-powered icebreaker uses nuclear fuel to generate momentum and to push its bow upon the ice, and which causes ice to break off. Currently, Russia is the only country constructing nuclear-powered icebreakers in the world. Significance of the move is clears the Northern Sea route, which cuts down time to reach Asia by up to 2 weeks compared to the current route via the Suez Canal. The Arctic is 2 keys. Russia aims to gain 20% share in the global LNG market by 2035. Those are 35.